Willow Thorne clutched her abdomen, struggling to get out of bed. The moonlight streaming through the window made her face look even paler. From outside the door came familiar footsteps. It was Ethan Blackwood. Willow didn't know where she found the strength, but she gripped the doorknob tightly and opened the door. Ethan! Calling his name seemed to drain all her strength. Ethan Blackwood stopped and turned, his gaze cold as he looked at the thinly clad woman. "You're back, have you eaten?" Her voice was cautious, eager to please. A flicker of light ignited in her beautiful eyes. Ethan's expression was frosty. He turned to leave. His reaction was a piercing pain in Willow's heart. Willow chased after him, grabbing his sleeve. She bit her lip until it bled, the cramping in her abdomen making it hard to breathe. "Let go," a dark hostility filled Ethan's eyes. Willow's fingers loosened, only daring to grasp the hem of his sleeve. "Ethan, it hurts." Her voice trembled. "It's so late, can you take me to the hospital?" If it were daytime, she wouldn't have bothered him. "Where does it hurt?" Ethan turned, staring fixedly at her. "My stomach." Cold sweat beaded on her forehead. Ethan glanced down at the hand on her stomach and sneered. "Miss Thorne, your performances are getting more and more realistic. How long did you rehearse for this little show?" He raised his hand and yanked his sleeve from her grasp. He lifted his hand, gripping her jaw. "From the day you betrayed me, Ethan Blackwood, swore I would never forgive you in this lifetime. Unless—" a cruel smile touched Ethan's lips. "You die." It felt as if all the blood in Willow's body froze. She couldn't stop shaking, but Ethan didn't spare her another glance, walking straight into the bedroom and shutting the door. A pain like a twisting knife ripped through her stomach, and Willow collapsed to her knees. Trembling, she fumbled for her phone and dialed 911. Hearing the ambulance sirens fade into the distance, Ethan's expression remained cold. Willow Thorne had always been unscrupulous, willing to do anything to achieve her goals. This was just another act she was putting on to stay in the Blackwood family. After all, the Thorne family was on the verge of bankruptcy. A woman like her, who had abandoned him for someone else the moment he'd hit rock bottom, would never allow herself to live a hard life. Willow sat on a hospital bench, clutching the test results. Her gaze rested blankly on the white wall. The results were in. She had late-stage intestinal cancer. Willow took a cab to the hospital where Dr. Alistair Finch worked. He had received her call and was waiting to meet her at the entrance. Willow's eyes were red-rimmed, but she managed a smile for him. "Alistair." She clutched the report tightly. "My results are back. The doctor says it's terminal intestinal cancer." The color drained from Alistair's face. Her nose tingled, and she looked at him with pleading eyes. "Could you run the tests again? Maybe they made a mistake." Alistair Finch was a doctor, a specialist in gastroenterology. Willow was wheeled into the examination room. At 5 in the afternoon, the results came back, identical to the initial diagnosis: terminal intestinal cancer. Willow sat there, stunned. Her lips trembled as she asked, "How long do I have?" Alistair knelt, placing his hands with their well-defined knuckles on her shoulders. "Willow, I will save you." "It's cancer." Willow's tears finally fell. "It's cancer." Her illness felt just like her marriage to Ethan hopeless. The lights in the room were dim. Willow sat on the sofa in the dark, without turning on any lamps. At midnight, headlights cut through the darkness, piercing the glass and casting a sliver of light into the room. Soon the door opened, and Ethan Blackwood walked in. He reached out and flipped on the lights, immediately spotting Willow sitting there in silence. He averted his gaze, loosening his tie as he walked toward the stairs. "Ethan Blackwood," she called out to him. He didn't stop. Willow's fingers tightened, her nails digging into her palms. After a long moment, she lifted her head, looked at his retreating back, and forced a smile. "Let's get a divorce." As she had hoped, Ethan finally stopped and turned around. Silhouetted against the light, he looked even more unapproachable. Willow's eyes traced the lines of his face. This was the man she had loved for 10 years. A decade of devotion had earned her nothing but his disgust and a body full of scars. She shouldn't drag him down any longer. "Will you die if you don't pull some stunt for a day?" She was just playing hard to get again. Willow stood up and took the divorce papers out of her purse. Her hand brushed against the bottle of painkillers inside, and she froze for a second. Then, without a word, she zipped the purse shut and set it aside. She walked up to Ethan and handed him the papers. Her signature was already on them. She tried her best to hide her emotions. "Don't you want to marry Jane Ivers?" She forced a smile. "I'll give you what you want." If she had known earlier that he loved Jane, she would have never married him, not even if it killed her. Their marriage had been a necessity, but for her, it had also been a one-sided love affair. Ethan glanced at her signature and took the papers. He pressed his tongue against his cheek, then slapped the divorce papers onto her shoulder. "Miss Thorne, you truly live up to your finance degree," he said, leaning in, his eyes cold. "How much of the Blackwood fortune are you planning to take when you divorce me?" Willow was stunned for a moment. She pressed her lips together and said softly, "I never wanted your money." Ethan didn't speak, just stared at her coldly. 3 years ago, the Blackwood family had faced a crisis. His father was imprisoned, and he had to sell off all his assets to pay the debts. Back then, he was penniless. And this woman, who had always professed her love for him, disappeared the day after his downfall. Later, he heard that she was seen with Gideon Cross. The Cross family was the one responsible for framing his father. And to think his father had treated Willow so well. She was just a woman who would sell herself for money. Was there anything she wouldn't do? And yet, Willow Thorne had somehow convinced his father to force him into this marriage. "Get out," he said, his eyes filled with ice. He turned to leave, but Willow spread her arms to block his way. "Don't you love Jane? I'm giving you what you want. I can sign an agreement saying I won't take a single penny from you." "Yes, I love Jane." Ethan's eyes narrowed, a smirk playing on his lips. "And I will give her a grand wedding and make her my wife." He squinted, "But not while I'm still entangled with you." The door slammed shut. Ethan went into the bathroom and let the cold water run over him, his hands clenched into fists. Willow turned and picked up the divorce papers from the floor. Her phone rang. It was her mother, crying. Her father was gravely ill and had been rushed to the hospital. Willow hurried over, only to learn from her mother that the Thorne family was going bankrupt. The shock had triggered her father's illness. She suddenly remembered Ethan's words. "How much of the Blackwood fortune are you planning to take?" No wonder he'd said that. He must have known all along that her family was on the verge of collapse. Victoria Thorne grabbed Willow's slender arms. "Willow, go ask Ethan Blackwood for money. You're his wife. He won't refuse you." "He despises me," Willow said with a bitter smile, her expression dim. "Why would he give me money?" Victoria slapped her across the face. "Are you just going to watch your father die? Why are you so useless?" Willow's lips trembled as she stared at her mother, a chill spreading through her heart. Back when the Blackwood family was in trouble, Gideon Cross had approached her. He claimed to have evidence of her mother's affair. He also said that if she broke up with Ethan, he would give her a large sum of money to help pay off the Blackwood's debts. She had watched Ethan, tormented and overwhelmed, trying to save his father. She had been helpless, unable to do anything. At the time, she thought, as long as it helps Ethan, what does it matter if he misunderstands me? She took the money from Gideon and used it to solve the Blackwoods' financial crisis. She had said cruel things and broken Ethan's heart. She never thought she would have anything to do with him again. Then, one day, Ethan's father had asked to see her. The man on the hospital bed was so weak that even breathing seemed a struggle. He had asked her to marry Ethan, saying he knew her reasons. Willow hadn't agreed at the time. But the next day, her family accepted a huge sum of money from the Blackwoods. Ethan was forced by his father to marry her, and he hated her for it. Willow walked out of the hospital room and swallowed a painkiller. Just as she started to walk away, she saw a woman in a patient's gown standing nearby. The woman's skin was fair, her eyes large and round, and her nose and mouth were delicately shaped. Her name was Jane Ivers, the woman Ethan now loved and once Willow's best friend. Willow averted her gaze and turned to leave. "Willow Thorne," Jane called out to her. Willow gritted her teeth and walked faster. The woman's laughter echoed from behind her. "I heard the Thorne family is finished." She caught up to Willow, stood in front of her, and said coldly, "You finally got what you deserved." Willow looked at her coldly and said, "Get lost." Jane wasn't angry. She casually picked at her nails. "You're so pathetic. Ethan doesn't even want you, yet you still cling to him." Her eyes were triumphant. "Did you know? Ethan has been with me these past few days. You want to be Mrs. Blackwood, don't you?" Willow's lips tightened. "Tell him to come talk to me about the divorce." Jane's eyes narrowed. "You don't actually think he's not divorcing you because he can't forget you, do you?" Jane burst out laughing. "Willow, you're so naive. She leaned closer to Willow. He's just trying to get back at you to make you taste the same pain. When he gets tired of you, you'll be no different from trash, Jane whispered in her ear. Oh, by the way, he's never touched you, has he? Willow's fingers clenched. She looked down, her cold gaze fixed on Jane. Do you know why? Jane's nails slowly traced a line down her face. Because he thinks you're dirty. I heard the money you used to pay off the Blackwood debt was your breakup fee from Ethan, but it was also a gift from your lover, Gideon Cross. So, the willow thorn that Ethan loved so deeply had slept with Gideon Cross. How could he not hate her? Are you done? Willow brushed her hand away. If you're done, then get lost. Willow never saw it coming. Jane threw herself backward, landing hard on the floor. Footsteps rushed up from behind her, and then Ethan was holding Jane in his arms. He lifted Jane to her feet and turned to look at Willow. That one look sent a bone-deep chill through Willow. Jane had been injured for Ethan's sake before. Her bones were fragile. This fall had dislocated a vertebra in her neck. Ethan kicked open the bedroom door, ripped the covers off the bed, and dragged Willow up. How can you be so vicious? Years ago, when Willow wanted to break up with him, he had run out in the rain to find her, injured and distraught, and was almost hit by a car. It was Jane who had pushed him out of the way, but because of that, Jane could no longer dance. How am I vicious? Willow stared at the man before her, tears in her eyes. Ethan Blackwood, if you have the guts, then just kill me. She looked at him through tear-filled eyes, her gaze defiant. I never betrayed you, I never slept with Gideon Cross. A sharp cramp shot through her abdomen, and Willow's body began to tremble uncontrollably. Ethan's dark eyes stared at her for a long time, and then he laughed. Do you think I'm as easy to fool as I was back then? His eyes were bloodthirsty. What kind of person is Gideon Cross? Do you think he'd give you money if you didn't sleep with him? The Cross family was full of scoundrels. They weren't in the business of charity. The pain was so intense that for a moment, Willow couldn't speak. She took a sharp breath. She knew Ethan would never believe her. She forced a smile. If that's what you want to believe, then go ahead. Willow pushed Ethan's hand away and tried to get up. Ethan pressed her down. Willow struggled. Let go of me. Ethan leaned in close to her ear. Do you think I want to touch you? I think you're dirty. Her already cold heart was shattered into a million pieces by his words. He unbuttoned his shirt, one button at a time. Didn't you say you never slept with him? Ethan's smile was like something out of hell. I'm just going to check. A shiver ran through Willow's body. She bit her lip and pounded on Ethan's shoulders, but she was no match for his strength. A fine tremor swept through her, and cold sweat beaded on her forehead. Her abdomen felt like it was being twisted by a knife. The pain was so intense that she instinctively curled into a ball. Stop acting, Ethan said coldly. I haven't even touched you. It hurts. Willow trembled violently. My stomach hurts. Painkillers. Painkillers, the word echoed in Willow's mind. She struggled, pushing Ethan away. Caught off guard, Ethan stumbled back, his leg hitting the nightstand. Willow's purse, which had been on the nightstand, fell to the floor. A bottle of pills rolled out, and Ethan looked down, spotting 2 pieces of paper. He squinted, reaching to pick them up. Willow's face tensed. She tried to snatch them, but Ethan was faster. Ethan couldn't understand the medical terminology, but he understood the last few words. Terminal intestinal cancer. His expression was complicated as he looked at Willow, who lay there, limp as a fish out of water. Ethan bent down and picked up one of the pill bottles, turning it over in his hand. His eyes fell on the label. After a long moment, he threw the test results and the pill bottle onto the bed. Such an elaborate scheme, he sneered. You think forging this will make me feel sorry for you? Ethan leaned over, bracing his arms on the bed. He even gently wiped the sweat from her brow. You're not Jane. Even if you died, I wouldn't feel a thing. She was just putting on a pathetic imitation, seeing that Jane was sick. She was so young. Cancer? How was that possible? Willow Thorne had always been a liar. Ethan left. Willow lay on the bed, reached for the pill bottle he had thrown, and swallowed one without water. An hour later, the pain gradually subsided. Willow stared at the white ceiling and suddenly began to laugh. She laughed until tears streamed down her face. Her phone rang. Willow wiped the sweat from her forehead and pressed the phone to her ear. Willow, did you get the money from Ethan? On the other end, Victoria Thorne's voice came through. Willow clutched her stomach and sat up, gently rubbing the sore spot. Her lips were pale, her eyes lifeless. I'm not going to ask him for money. Then go ask Gideon Cross, doesn't he like you? Victoria grew anxious, her voice suddenly sharp. Are you going to let your father die? Willow bit her lip, her fingers gripping her clothes tightly. Her eyes grew cold. Anyone who didn't know better would think you were devoted to my father. Victoria's breathing hitched, and she frowned. What do you mean? Thinking of the evidence Gideon had, Willow wiped her reddened eyes. Sheldon Wright. She said the name of her mother's lover. Willow heard silence on the other end, and a few seconds later, Victoria hung up. Alistair Finch advised Willow to be hospitalized, but she refused. She got a large supply of medication from him, enough to last her for a while. As she arrived home, she saw Ethan rushing out of the Blackwood mansion. Willow had rarely seen him in such a hurry. She wanted to ask him what was wrong, but Ethan didn't give her the chance, getting straight into his car. Once inside, the maid told Willow that something had happened to Jane. Jane had always been in poor health, and it turned out she had been diagnosed with severe heart failure. Willow went to the hospital where her father was staying. She remembered meeting Jane there last time. In the hallway, she saw Ethan pacing back and forth. He was wearing a black shirt and black trousers, his hair slightly disheveled. The corners of his phoenix eyes were red, and his thin lips were pressed tightly together. He must be so sad and worried, Willow thought. After all, he loved Jane so much. During the years Willow and Ethan were together, she knew he truly loved her. She knew what he was like when he was devoted to someone. In fact, she had been truly happy, truly fulfilled. Willow thought, since I'm going to die anyway, I might as well do something for Ethan. Hopefully, he won't hate me so much after I'm gone. And hopefully, if there's a next life, I'll never have to meet him again. Ethan's team was urgently searching for a heart donor, as Jane couldn't wait any longer. And Willow signed the organ donation agreement for after her death, then got tested to see if she was a match for Jane. Leaving the hospital, Willow took the medicine she got from Alistair out of her bag and threw it into a trash can. She didn't need it anymore. Willow. Hearing the voice, Willow's body stiffened. A large, well-defined hand rested on her shoulder. There was a scar on his index finger from where Willow had bitten him. Years ago, she had refused him, no matter what, all for Ethan Blackwood. The man walked in front of her. He had a buzz cut, thick eyebrows, deep-set eyes, and a high-bridged nose. His features were more striking than most. He smiled a lot, but his smiles were always unnerving. She noticed a hideous scar on Gideon Cross's neck. Gideon, Willow closed her eyes. Gideon leaned in, smiled at her, and then pointed to the scar on his neck. Ethan did this. How do you think I should get my revenge? Willow suddenly remembered Gideon saying something similar 3 years ago. If you don't come with me, how do you think I should kill Ethan Blackwood? If the Blackwood family hadn't been in trouble, Willow wouldn't have been afraid. But at that time, the Cross family was powerful, while the once leading Blackwood Corporation had collapsed overnight. Willow had watched Ethan, his eyes bloodshot, go to people who were once close to the Blackwoods to borrow money. The once golden boy, as cool and refined as jade, had cast aside all his pride. But a single word from the Cross family could bring Ethan's efforts to nothing, and could also ensure he would never rise again. Willow smiled faintly. Gideon, you deserved it. Gideon stared at her thoughtfully. You're relying on Ethan as your backup. But I heard he's been very close with your good friend, Jane Ivers, lately. Willow didn't want to talk to him anymore. She pushed his hand away. Just as she turned, she felt a wave of dizziness, her body went limp, and she lost consciousness. Blackwood Mansion. Ethan leaned back on the sofa, his eyes closed, his arm resting on his forehead. The hospital said a heart was hard to find. If they couldn't find a suitable heart, Jane would die. Ethan tugged at his tie in frustration. The phone on the coffee table rang. It was from Jane's hospital. Mr. Blackwood, Miss Ivers is awake. Ethan's tense heart relaxed a little. He stood up, grabbed his suit jacket, and headed out the door, but a black Bentley was blocking the entrance. Ethan couldn't get out. Ethan pushed his car door open and walked toward the other vehicle. Mr. Cross, you've got some nerve, he sneered when he saw who it was. Gideon licked his lips, leaning his left arm on the car door and motioning with his chin toward the car. I'm bringing Willow back. She's asleep. Ethan glanced into the car and saw Willow asleep in the passenger seat. He quickly looked away and gave Gideon a faint smile. If she's asleep, you can take her home. Why bring her to me? Willow, who had slightly opened her eyes, slammed them shut as tears welled up. Gideon tilted his head. Mr. Blackwood, you won't regret this. Ethan, Who do you think she is to me?" With that, Ethan turned, got back in his car, and silently watched Gideon, who was still standing outside. Gideon found this amusing. He ducked back into his car and moved it out of the way. Soon, Ethan's car disappeared from sight. Willow slowly opened her eyes and unbuckled her seatbelt to get out. Gideon stopped her. "You're sick." His voice was flat. Willow didn't say anything. He turned his head. "Do you want me to take you away?" Willow pushed his hand away and got out of the car. Gideon rolled down the window. "Willow, he doesn't care about you at all. I got news that Jane woke up. He's 100% on his way to the hospital to see her. If you don't believe me, get in and I'll take you there." "It has nothing to do with me." Willow stood up straight and walked, step by step, into the Blackwood mansion. For some reason, Gideon felt a sense of unease, as if something was about to happen. Hospital. Jane lay in bed. She had been crying, and her nose and eyes were red. "Ethan, 3 years ago, one day my heart felt uncomfortable, and I couldn't breathe, so I went to the hospital. The doctor said it was because I didn't take a severe cold seriously, so I developed myocarditis. I've been on medication for years, but I never thought it would turn into heart failure. Tell me, am I not going to live much longer? 3 years ago, a severe cold." Ethan closed his eyes. That night, Jane had saved him in the rain, and the next day she had a high fever that lasted for 3 whole days. She had become like this because of him. "You're not going to die," Ethan comforted her. Jane held his hand and cried, but a heart isn't that easy to find. Night fell. In a half-dreaming state, Willow heard the door open. She groggily sat up, but before she could, she was pushed back onto the bed. The man smelled strongly of alcohol, but it wasn't unpleasant. The moonlight seeped into the room, and Willow saw the man's face. "Ethan!" Willow's eyes lit up. The man rustled as he took off her clothes, burying his face in her neck. Willow tentatively wrapped her arms around his neck. Ethan didn't pull away. She pressed her lips together and endured it. "Willow Thorne," the man called her name hoarsely. This Ethan made her feel dazed. "Yes," she answered with a smile. She cupped his face, her fingers tracing his ear. This was her lover, her Ethan. His warm hands cupped her face, almost covering half of it. Ethan leaned down, and Willow could see his deep pupils, his long eyelashes, and the faint crease of his double eyelids. Ethan's thin lips parted, his eyes calm. "Willow Thorne, why isn't it you who's sick? Why isn't it you who's dying?" There was no deep hatred in his eyes, but that made Willow feel even colder. Not even hatred. How little did he care? Willow closed her eyes. But Ethan, she wouldn't live much longer either. She could grant him his wish, disappear from his world forever. Then his world would be bright again, wouldn't it? Ethan fell into a deep sleep beside her. Willow sat up all night, hugging her knees. She left the room before Ethan woke up. He had come to her room because he was drunk. When he sobered up and realized he had slept with her, he would be disgusted. After all, he thought she was dirty. The morning sun streamed through the white curtains into the room. The man on the bed stirred, resting his arm on his forehead as he opened his eyes. The chaos of last night lingered in his mind, but it was too fleeting to grasp. He realized he was in Willow's room. He subconsciously looked at the sheets. They weren't the ones that had flashed through his mind. Ethan pinched the bridge of his nose and walked out. At that moment, Willow was squatting in the laundry room, staring blankly at the spinning drum of the washing machine. Footsteps approached from behind. Willow immediately stood up, then winced. Her legs were completely numb. A strong hand steadied her waist. "Yesterday," Ethan looked into her eyes. Willow smiled at him. "You were drunk. You threw up all over the bed." Ethan's lips tightened, and he pulled his hand away. The jumbled images in his mind didn't quite match what Willow said. He unbuttoned his shirt. Maybe he had been dreaming. To think he had dreamed of being with Willow. "Are you having donuts for breakfast?" Ethan waved his hand. "I'm going to the hospital to see Jane." The smile on Willow's face froze for a second, but she hid it well. "Go on then. Goodbye." Her phone dinged. Willow looked down, avoiding his gaze, and saw a message. It was the matching results. She could donate her heart to Jane. Willow looked up, rubbing her sore nose, and called out to the departing Ethan. "Wait!" Ethan turned back. Willow stood there, smiling at him, a faint, shallow smile that made his heart clench. "Wait for me," Willow said, then turned and ran. She went upstairs, took a delicate navy blue gift box from a cabinet, and ran back down. "This is for you," she said, breathless. Her stomach churned, but she bit her lip hard, not letting any trace of pain show on her face. Inside the box was a tie. Ethan glanced at it and said, "This tie doesn't match the suit I'm wearing today." Willow shook her head. "It's fine, you can wear it later." It was fine if he didn't wear it either. She had actually bought this tie a long time ago. She was giving it to him today because she was afraid she wouldn't have another chance. Ethan was going to France for a month on a business trip. On the third day there, he received a call from the hospital saying that a terminally ill patient was a match for Jane. This patient was willing to donate her heart to Jane after her death. Ethan wanted to thank this person, but the hospital politely said that the patient wished to remain anonymous. "Mr. Blackwood, Mrs. Blackwood's father is not doing well." As Ethan came out of the conference room, Leo Nash stood before him to report. "How much money is needed?" Leo said. $150,000. "Pay for it. Make sure he gets the best treatment." Leo nodded. Ethan returned to the hotel. He lay on the sofa, closing his eyes to rest, but felt a persistent emptiness in his heart. He opened his eyes, picked up his phone, and opened WhatsApp to his chat with Willow. She hadn't sent him a single message during his trip to France. He scrolled up message after message of her daily chatter. He rarely replied. This time, with her father seriously ill, she hadn't told him. Ethan frowned and closed the chat. He made a call home. "Where is my wife?" he asked. The maid answered respectfully. "Mrs. Blackwood went back to her family's home. She said she'll move back when you return." Ethan breathed a sigh of relief. Willow was timid, afraid of thunder, the dark, and pain. She wouldn't want to be in a big house by herself. On Ethan's 15th day in France, the hospital finalized the surgical plan, and Jane underwent several more checkups. Ethan also heard that the person donating her heart to Jane was not doing well. She was also in the hospital and might not live more than half a month. He asked, and the doctor said she had very serious intestinal cancer. Hearing this, Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Intestinal cancer. Willow's report had also said intestinal cancer. The coincidence made Ethan uneasy. He immediately called Willow. She was lying in a hospital bed, frighteningly thin after just half a month. A nurse held the phone to her. When she saw the name on the screen, a smile touched her eyes. This was the first time Ethan had ever called her on his own initiative. She trembled as she tried to remove her oxygen mask. The nurse stopped her, but Willow shook her head. She took the phone and answered. After a brief silence, Ethan asked, "I'm coming back on the 7th of next month. You can come home on the 7th. "Okay," Willow said with a small laugh. Ethan felt something was off. "Ethan, I'm so sleepy. Can you call me tomorrow?" Her voice was weak. Ethan just assumed she wasn't fully awake. He checked the time. It was 8 in the morning there. On an impulse, he said, "Okay, I'll call you tomorrow." The call ended. The phone slipped from Willow's hand. She gasped for breath, and the nurse scrambled to put the oxygen mask back on her. Willow closed her eyes, everything fading to white. "I really want to see the sun tomorrow." Her voice was a mere whisper. "And I really want to answer his call." But she knew she wouldn't be able to. The work that was supposed to take another half a month, Ethan finished in a single day. He booked a flight back home that night. Before heading to the airport, as he put on his suit, he suddenly remembered something and took the tie Willow had given him from his suitcase. The wine-red tie went perfectly with the suit he was wearing. He boarded the plane early. Before turning off his phone, Ethan received a message from the hospital. "Mr. Blackwood, the donor passed away 2 minutes ago. Miss Ivor's heart transplant surgery will take place in 2 hours." The plane landed. Ethan got off, and Leo took his suitcase and put it in the car. "To the hospital," Ethan said, bending down to get into the car. The 7-hour flight was exhausting. Ethan pinched the bridge of his nose. He glanced outside. The sun was rising from the horizon. He took out his phone and called Willow. He had promised to call her, and he wouldn't break his word. An unfamiliar ringtone played. The seconds ticked by, but Willow didn't answer. Still not awake? Ethan tugged at his tie. The car arrived at 3rd Hospital. Ethan walked through the outpatient building and took the elevator to the sky bridge on the 3rd floor of the inpatient department. Just as he stepped in, the elevator next to him opened, and someone pushed a gurney with a deceased person out. Ethan glanced over. The person was covered with a white sheet. A woman's hand hung limply from under it. His heart suddenly clenched. Just as he was about to look at the family members pushing the gurney, the elevator doors started to close. He reached out to stop them, and as he was about to step out, a family of 3 walked in. "Thank you," the woman said to Ethan. She had thought she would have to catch the next one. She hadn't expected someone inside to hold the door. Ethan rushed out of the elevator and looked around, but they were gone. "Sir, are you coming up?" The woman in the elevator called out to his back. Ethan felt a moment of confusion. He walked back to the elevator and chuckled at himself. He must be going crazy. For a second he thought that hand, that woman, was Willow. He was insane. Willow always wore her wedding ring on her left hand. She wore it every day and had never once taken it off. How could that ringless hand be hers? Jane had just finished surgery and hadn't woken up yet. Ethan stood guard outside for a while. He called Willow again. Still no answer. Ethan stood up and instructed Leo, "Go to the Thorne residence." The Thorne family's gate was shut tight. No one was there. Ethan sat in the car, smoking one cigarette after another. 3 hours later, the Thorne's car arrived. Victoria Thorne got out of the car, carrying a bag. Behind her followed the family's housekeeper, holding something in her arms, her eyes red. He looked in the car, but no one else got out. As Victoria walked, she heard the housekeeper's sobs. She frowned and turned back. "What are you crying for?" Willow had finally married Ethan Blackwood. The Blackwood family was so rich, and she died without getting a single penny. The Blackwoods had paid for her husband's treatment, but the money hadn't come to her. Now that the Thorne family was bankrupt, what was she going to spend? Miss is so pitiful. The housekeeper couldn't stop her grief. She didn't even have a complete body left in death. She had watched Willow grow up. She was still so young, such a cheerful girl. What's pitiful about her? I'm the unlucky one. I only had this one daughter, and before I could enjoy anything, she up and died. And she donated her heart. Don't you think there's something wrong with her? She should have had more children. Who did you say died? Hearing this voice, Victoria was startled. She paused and looked in the direction of the man's voice. When she saw Ethan, her legs went weak. To be honest, she had always been a little afraid of Ethan. "Willow is dead," Victoria said. Despite her fear, she was still a little impatient. Even if Willow and Ethan had divorced, she could have gotten a large share of his fortune. What was the point of dying now? "I asked you, who died?" Ethan walked over. "Victoria. Willow Thorne." "Ha," Ethan sneered. "Are you two playing hide and seek?" Willow had wanted a divorce for a while. Now she was probably hiding at her mother's house and pretending to be dead. Ethan looked at the urn in the housekeeper's arms, the corners of his eyes turning red. This act was a little too realistic, but he didn't believe Willow was dead. If she were, how could Victoria not show a single trace of sadness at losing her own daughter? "Open the gate," Ethan gestured toward the Thorne house. Victoria frowned. Ethan clearly didn't believe her. Victoria motioned for the housekeeper to open the gate. Ethan strode into the Thorne house. He went straight to Willow's bedroom. He was about to push the door open, but for some reason, his heart sank heavily. He pulled his hand back and knocked instead. "Willow Thorne, come out." The only response was dead silence. "What kind of tantrum are you throwing?" he said, his lips pressed tightly together. "What right do you have to throw a tantrum? You betrayed me first. What right do you have to be angry?" As Ethan spoke to the door, his hands trembled uncontrollably. Victoria stood behind him with her arms crossed, watching for a moment before walking over and opening the door in front of him. Willow was nowhere to be seen in the bedroom. It was so clean and simple it looked as if no one had ever lived there. Victoria said, "She hasn't been home for a long time. When I got the news, Willow was critically ill. She had also signed an organ donation agreement. I don't know who got her heart." "Stop lying," Ethan said, his fists clenched. Jane had just had a heart transplant, and now Victoria was saying Willow had donated her heart? Ridiculous. How could Willow donate her heart to Jane? She clearly disliked her. It seemed Victoria wasn't going to tell the truth. Ethan strode out, calling Leo as he walked. "Check all the hotel check-in records for me. I have to find Willow Thorne. How dare she leave without a word? She was the one who did wrong. Why was she playing the victim?" Just as he hung up, his phone rang. "Sir, Mrs. Blackwood forgot her ring," the maid at home said. A while ago, Willow had said she was going back to her mother's for a few days. The maid had been sent home. She only came back to clean when she heard the master was returning. Then she found Willow's ever-present wedding ring on the table. "I know," Ethan said, getting into the car. He rubbed the ring finger of his left hand, his jaw tight. Willow had once argued with him because he didn't wear a wedding ring. "I wasn't the one who wanted to marry you. Are you worthy of wearing a matching ring with me?" That's what he had said to her then. Willow had cried. At the time, he had felt a sharp sense of satisfaction. He was angry. How could Willow betray him and then, 3 years later, marry him as if nothing had happened? Ethan had heard that Willow had taken a large sum of money from his family. The car quickly arrived at the Blackwood mansion. The maid was waiting at the door and opened it for him when he arrived. The ring was right there on the coffee table. She didn't dare move her employer's belongings, so she led Ethan over. Ethan confirmed that the ring on the coffee table was indeed his and Willow's wedding ring. She had really taken it off. Ethan clutched the ring in his hand, then lit a cigarette. Through the swirling smoke, he received a message from Leo. There was no record of Willow Thorne checking into any hotel in the city. Ethan said, "Check her travel records." He paused, "And Gideon Cross's movements." Leo was silent for a moment. Gideon Cross went to the Thorne residence. The Thorne residence. Victoria Thorne sat on the sofa, fiddling with her nails. Gideon Cross sat opposite her. He took out a check and pressed it onto the table. "I want to take Willow's ashes." Victoria's eyes lit up when she saw the check, and she glanced at the amount. $3 million. She cleared her throat. "It's not really proper for you to take them. Shouldn't they go to the Blackwood family?" Gideon made a call. "Bring $2 million in cash over." Victoria couldn't help but smile. She uncrossed her legs and picked up the check with her index and middle fingers. "Thanks." She couldn't resist saying, "If only Willow had married you back then." Gideon's lips curled, but his eyes were devoid of warmth. "Aunt Liu, bring Willow's urn." How should she spend this check? Victoria's mind was already racing. Willow was dead. She couldn't use the old man to blackmail Willow for the Blackwood's money anymore. She wasn't going to bother with the one in the hospital. She was going to find Sheldon Wright. Gideon took the ashes and stood up to leave. He got into his car. The box holding Willow's ashes was exquisite. A small box holding what was once a living person. Gideon's fingers traced the patterns on it. He knew Willow had terminal intestinal cancer, with no cure. He also knew she had decided to donate her heart and that the recipient was Jane. During Willow's hospitalization, he had visited a few times. Each time, her condition was worse than the last. Later, Willow asked him for a favor. She said, "Don't come anymore. But when I die, can you help me collect my ashes?" Willow knew her father's condition was too poor for him to handle her funeral arrangements. Her mother had always been materialistic. She probably wouldn't be sad that she was dead. She'd probably be angry. As for Ethan, he would probably be happy to know she was dead. Gideon didn't go back. His people kept an eye on Willow's situation around the hospital. He went to work as usual, held meetings as usual, and waited for news about Willow. Every minute was torture, like someone sitting at a dinner table, slowly cutting his heart with a knife and fork. The sound of screeching brakes suddenly broke the silence. Gideon instinctively hugged the box in his arms as his body slammed against the seat. "Mr. Cross, someone's blocking the road," the driver said nervously. Gideon looked through the window and saw Ethan get out of the black car opposite them, holding a baseball bat. Then, with a crash, the windshield shattered. "Get out," Ethan said, walking to the side of the car and pressing his palm against the window, looking at Gideon inside. The driver held his head in his hands, too scared to make a sound. Gideon placed the urn aside and pushed the door open to get out. "Mr. Blackwood," his voice was mocking. Ethan said coldly, "Give me the box." "What do you want it for? To keep it or to destroy it?" Gideon couldn't stand Ethan. Years ago, Willow had only gotten involved with him because of Ethan. He wasn't a gentleman. He had thought about sleeping with Willow, but she had refused, even to the death. Ethan was powerful, but Gideon Cross wasn't bad either. Willow was good in every way, except for her taste in men. "None of your damn business." Gideon narrowed his eyes. "I won't give it to you. You don't deserve it." "Leo," Ethan stepped back, and Leo and his men moved forward, surrounding Gideon. He wanted to see if Gideon's mouth was tougher than their fists. At first, Gideon could fight back, but gradually he was overwhelmed. Ethan watched for a while, then opened the car door and took out the box Gideon had been protecting. The box looked familiar. It was the one the housekeeper had been holding. They said it was Willow's urn. How ridiculous. "Put that down," Gideon yelled from the ground, his eyes wide with fury. "I won't let you touch it, don't you dare defile her." Ethan wrapped the box in his suit jacket and ordered Leo, "Take him in the car." To the Cross residence. Gideon's private residence was in the Bayside New District, not far from Ethan's place. Willow must be at Gideon's. After all, there was no record of her at any hotel, and Leo had checked her travel records. Willow hadn't left the city. She wasn't at home, so the only place left was Gideon's. Ethan held a cigarette between his fingers, his elbow resting on the car window, watching the scenery fly by. He was going to find Willow and make this woman, who was still in contact with Gideon, regret it. Gideon was beaten half to death. He was held up by a man on each side and sat in the back seat. He gasped for breath, his eyes fixed on the corner of the jacket Ethan had used to wrap the urn. He had to get the ashes back. They were Willow's. Willow had never wanted to give herself to Ethan. He had to fulfill her wish. Gideon was escorted into his own home. Ethan sat on the sofa, leaning back, his thin lips parting to release a puff of smoke. Hand over Willow Thorne. At that moment, Gideon was being held down on his knees. Ethan looked at Gideon as if he were looking at a dead man. The Cross family was behind the Blackwood Corporation's bankruptcy years ago. Gideon spat out a mouthful of blood and laughed, staring into Ethan's eyes. "Isn't she with you?" He stared at Ethan's side. "She married you, her heart was given to your lover Jane, and in the end, you even took her ashes." "Ethan Blackwood, aren't you ridiculous? What are you asking me for?" Ethan's fingers tapped lightly on the sofa. Then he leaned forward, his hands clasped over his lower lip. "You're not planning to keep the Cross family business." His eyes were mocking. Gideon's brow furrowed. "I've recently uncovered some things. The Cross Corporation is incredibly corrupt, and the Cross family is just as filthy." Ethan took out his phone and pulled up a call log. "You must be familiar with this number. The Cross family's dog has decided he doesn't want to be a dog anymore." "Ethan Blackwood," Gideon gritted his teeth. Ethan's patience ran out. He personally pushed open every door in Gideon's house. Gideon was being held down and couldn't see what Ethan was doing, but he could tell by the sounds. He burst out laughing. "Weren't you hoping she would die every day? Now that she's dead, you must be the happiest person, right?" Gideon pressed on. "You know in your heart that Willow is really dead, but you don't want to believe it, do you? You think Willow and I faked her death to escape you. You think Willow just doesn't want to see you anymore. Ethan Blackwood, you're wrong. She was thinking of you before she died. Don't you love Jane? She got matched with that woman long ago, just so Jane could live and be with you." A flicker of satisfaction appeared on Gideon's face. He coughed heavily twice. A hand suddenly clamped around his neck. A gasping sound came from Gideon's throat. Ethan's fingers tightened. Veins bulged on Gideon's face, which turned from red to purple. "Shut up," Ethan said, not looking much better himself. Gideon opened his mouth and managed a laugh, somewhat recklessly. "You can very well." His voice sounded like an old bellows. "Go to the hospital and check her. Medical records, the hospital. Won't fake them." Did Ethan really not know this? Gideon thought he must know, but going to the hospital would make Ethan fully realize he had lost Willow. Ethan was choosing to escape. "She gave you what you wanted, why don't you? Just be happy with your lover, together." Gideon couldn't speak anymore. His vision blurred and snowflakes danced before his eyes. Ethan released his fingers and pushed him away. Gideon collapsed on the floor, clutching his chest, his coughs growing louder and louder. Next, the attending physician clipped the registration form to a small clipboard and unscrewed his water bottle, preparing to take a sip. The door opened. He subconsciously glanced up and put the water bottle back down. "Mr. Blackwood, what brings you here?" Who was the person who donated their heart to Jane? The doctor froze, a troubled look on his face. "I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwood. The donor specifically requested that her identity not be revealed. So, Mr. Ethan. Was her name Willow Thorne?" The doctor was surprised. How did Ethan know? His expression was enough to tell Ethan that it was indeed Willow. Ethan lowered his gaze. "Can I see the donation agreement?" Ethan's voice was hoarse. "She was my wife." On the donation agreement at the bottom where the signature was, were the 3 words, Willow Thorne. "Mr. Blackwood, this is Mrs. Blackwood's phone. I called her mother before, but she didn't answer. Since you're here, you can take it with you." That night, Ethan had a dream. He and Willow were entangled. He could feel the warmth of her skin, the softness of her lips. She was lying on light gray sheets. Willow frowned in pain. As she was lost in passion, he said to her, "Why isn't it you who's sick? Why isn't it you who's dying?" Ethan's eyes shot open. He gasped for air, staring into the darkness, then covered his face with his hands. He was in pain. Every time he thought of Willow, he felt pain. He got up, took the urn from the nightstand, hugged it tightly, and buried his face in the bed. The veins on the back of the hand clutching the urn bulged. "Ethan, can I marry you when I'm 20? When I'm 30, I want to go see the Alps. Let's have kids when we're 32. 2 would be best, so they can support each other if we're not around. After we retire, I want to live in the countryside. I want to create my own lavender kingdom. Ethan Blackwood, will you love me for a lifetime? Ethan Blackwood, I love you. Ethan Blackwood, let's break up. Let's get a divorce. I'm sick." Ethan curled up, clutching his head with both hands. Tears streamed down his face. The veins on his temples and neck bulged, and his face flushed red from the emotional breakdown. Willow's smiles, her words, her disappointed expressions, and their last phone call replayed endlessly in his mind. All reason and emotion shattered in that moment. How could he ever get her back? The maid heard the noise and rushed upstairs, knocking on the door repeatedly. "Sir, Mr. Blackwood, what's wrong? Please open the door." Crash! Something slammed against the door, followed by a gut-wrenching, "Get out!" The maid was frantic but didn't dare open the door now. Mr. Blackwood was terrifying when he was angry. She didn't dare stay by the door either. She was afraid that if Mr. Blackwood suddenly came out and saw her, a shiver ran down the maid's spine. The next day, the maid prepared breakfast at the usual time. Ethan came downstairs. The maid glanced at him and then looked away. "Mr. Blackwood, breakfast is ready." Ethan walked to the table and sat down, silent, not touching his food. The maid stood quietly to the side, glancing at him. "I'm giving you a 2-month leave with full pay," Ethan said, turning his head. The maid met his gaze and nodded. "Sir, after you finish eating, I'll clean up and then—" Ethan closed his eyes. "Leave." 5 minutes later, Ethan was alone in the villa. He finally picked up his chopsticks and grabbed a donut, but he couldn't take a single bite. He slowly stood up and went upstairs, pushing open the door to Willow's bedroom. Ethan stood at the door for a moment, then went to the bathroom. His gaze fell on her toothbrush in the cup. He paused for a few seconds and returned to the bedroom. He picked up Willow's pillow and walked to his own bedroom, moving his pillow aside and placing hers next to it. Leo Nash stood by the car, looking at the villa in front of him, pacing back and forth with his phone pressed to his ear. A few seconds later, the other end picked up. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm here." The man's deep voice came from the other end. "I know." Leo hung up the phone and took a deep breath. Soon, Ethan's figure appeared in his line of sight. He was wearing a black suit. Leo noticed that Ethan was wearing the same tie he had worn before returning from his trip. Seeing him approach, Leo quickly opened the car door. After Ethan sat down, he asked, "Mr. Blackwood, today's Sterling Business Forum is at the SR Tower. Mr. Lee hopes to meet with you after the conference." Leo glanced at Ethan's face in the rearview mirror. The latter's expression was mild, showing no emotion. After a moment, he replied, "All right, you arrange it." Leo unknowingly let out a sigh of relief and focused on the road ahead. The Sterling Business Forum was held once every 3 years, and many influential figures attended. Ethan sat in the front row, his long legs crossed, his hands clasped. The host was giving a speech on stage. He watched quietly. The people next to him were whispering to each other. The lively scene was a stark contrast to him, as if a barrier had formed between him and the world. "Mr. Blackwood," Liam Reagan sat down in the empty seat next to him. He couldn't resist coming to see Ethan now. His company had recently planned a project and he wanted to seek investment from Ethan. But why was Ethan alone? "Mr. Blackwood, where's your wife?" Today, all the prominent figures who came to the business forum brought female companions. Ethan stiffened. Liam didn't notice. "Last time, my wife saw your wife picking out a tie for you at the Imperial Mall." Liam's wife had told him about it when she got home. She said it seemed Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood had a very good relationship. Mrs. Blackwood was smiling the whole time she was picking out the tie. Liam continued, "My wife said your wife spent a long time choosing." He didn't notice the other man's face tighten. He took a card from his pocket and handed it to Ethan. This is an Imperial Mall all-access gold card. It's a small gift my wife wanted to give to your wife. Liam knew very well that Ethan could get this himself, but his gift was a way to curry favor and prepare for their future cooperation. However, Ethan had always been decisive and ruthless in business. Many experienced people were afraid of him. He was a very tough person. Liam didn't know if he would accept it. Ethan finally spoke. "On behalf of Willow, I thank Mrs. Reagan." Liam's face lit up with a smile. "Mr. Blackwood, you're too kind." Ethan said, "I hear your company is preparing a proposal for a new building project in the South New District. I was wondering if you're still looking for investors." It was easy to get things done with influential people. This was his first time interacting with Ethan, and he thought the man was remarkably straightforward. Liam said, "To be honest, I came to the business forum today to meet you and discuss this project. With the Blackwood Corporation's help, I believe this project will be a perfect success." He didn't know that Ethan hadn't heard a single word of what he said next. The man's well-defined fingers stroked the small card. With Willow's personality, she would have happily accepted this card and smiled brightly. The Sterling Business Forum ended, and Liam got into his car. He tapped his fingers on the car window, humming a little tune as he watched the street scene outside. He had been in business for 20 years, and no day had been smoother than today. Soon, the ringing of his phone pulled him back to reality. He answered the call, and his wife's voice came from the other end, sounding a little off. "Liam, can you come home early today and spend some time with me?" His wife's voice was low. Liam's heart skipped a beat. "What's wrong? Are you not feeling well?" "Honey, I'll be right back." "Not really, I just heard some bad news." Liam's wife continued. "The Blackwood Corporation's lady, Willow Thorne, is gone." "What?" Liam grabbed the back of the seat, his eyes filled with shock. He didn't believe it. If Willow was dead, why did Ethan just accept the card and thank him? And he didn't see anything different in Ethan's expression. "You must have misheard. Maybe it's someone with the same name." "I didn't mishear. I have a very strong impression of her. I can't believe that someone I just spoke to a while ago is suddenly—" The other end suddenly went silent. Liam comforted her. "Don't think too much about it. I'll be home soon." After saying that, he turned his head and glanced at the entrance of the Sterling Business Forum venue, just in time to see Ethan coming out. He straightened his suit and watch, then bent down to get into the car, looking no different than usual. Leo was driving, his eyes on the person in the rearview mirror. Ethan was on the phone, but it seemed the other person wasn't answering. He tried several more times. "Mr. Blackwood, the Cross family?" Leo hesitated. "Ethan. That kind of filth should be cleaned up." The next day, the head of the Cross Corporation was taken away by the police, as they had found evidence linking him to a homicide case from over a decade ago. Leo received a message from Ethan saying he wouldn't be coming to the company today. Around afternoon, Leo received the cooperation proposal from Liam Reagan's secretary. Leo drove to find Ethan. It was scorching hot today. The moment Leo got out of the air-conditioned car, he felt like he was going to cook. He knocked on the door several times, but no one answered. Leo called Ethan's phone, but no one picked up. He tucked the folder under his arm and entered the door code. There was no one in the living room, but Leo noticed many balloons on the coffee table and a large bouquet of red roses on the sofa. He took 2 steps forward and saw 2 bottles of red wine and 2 glasses on the dining table. This atmosphere felt wrong to Leo. Had the boss brought someone back? Wasn't Miss Ivers in the hospital? Besides, he didn't think the boss liked Miss Ivers. He only saw her as his savior. Leo ran up the stairs. "Mr. Blackwood?" he called out in the hallway. Clang, something heavy fell. Leo jumped and ran toward the sound. Ethan was in Willow's bedroom. There was a ladder in the middle of the room. Ethan was standing on it, a pen tucked behind his ear. He looked surprised to see Leo rushing in. Leo looked down. A paint roller lay quietly on the floor. Ethan held a balloon in his hand. "You're just in time. Hand me the brush." Leo walked over, bewildered. "Mr. Blackwood, what are you doing?" "It's Willow's birthday today. When we first started dating, she told me she wanted to see a starry sky every time she opened her eyes." Ethan smiled. One sentence, and Leo, who was handing Ethan a hammer, froze mid-air. He finally understood what was wrong. Willow was dead. What was the point of celebrating a dead person's birthday? "What are you standing there for?" Ethan was dissatisfied with his slow movements and bent down to take the tool from his hand. He painted the ceiling a deep ink blue. "Tell Aunt Liu to go home. I want to cook tonight." Ethan got off the ladder, moved it, and got back on. Leo opened his mouth. "Okay." He had sent Aunt Liu home 2 days ago. Didn't he remember? Leo was a bit confused. Soon, he put down his documents and jacket and hurried into the bedroom. "Mr. Blackwood, let me do it." Ethan laughed at him. "Can you paint stars?" Leo shook his head. "I'm not coming to the company next week." "You handle things for me," Ethan continued his work. "I'm taking Willow to the Alps." "Do I need to prepare a bag for you?" Leo looked up. Ethan paused. "What bag?" Leo gasped. "For the ashes." "Ethan, the country doesn't allow climbing in the Alps. No need to prepare a climbing bag." "What did you say? What ashes?" Leo fell silent. Something was wrong, very wrong. "Didn't you say your wife wasn't in good health?" Leo asked tentatively. Ethan smiled. "It's cold there, just prepare a few thick clothes, but I'll handle this." "I don't need you." The hair on Leo's arms stood on end. "Then, where has your wife gone?" Ethan was stunned again. He thought for a long time and shook his head. "She didn't tell me." Then he smiled again. "But she'll be back tonight." She was timid and wouldn't stay out late. Leo left the Blackwood residence. He had a friend who was a psychologist. He had thought about contacting him, but then he remembered Ethan's status. He agonized over it for a long time before contacting Ethan's father. Ethan believed Willow was still alive. He was experiencing delusions. It was likely he was having some mental problems. After finishing the painting, Ethan took off his gloves and walked out. There was a contract on the coffee table. He glanced at it. Was Leo here to deliver a contract? How could he be so careless as to forget to mention it? And he had carelessly left his jacket here. Ethan shook his head and carefully moved the flowers. He sat down and flipped through the contract. The phone in the bedroom on the second floor was ringing. Ethan didn't hear it. Jane had woken up yesterday. She thought she would see Ethan soon, so she hadn't contacted him. But she still hadn't seen him, and he wasn't answering her calls. The doctor said she needed to stay in the hospital for observation to see if there was any rejection of the heart. Jane kept calling, but it was no use. Right, there was also Leo. Leo must know where Ethan was. Leo had just finished his call with Ethan's father when Jane's call came through. "Where's Ethan?" Leo said. "Mr. Blackwood is at home." "At home, preparing a birthday surprise for Willow." "Why isn't he answering my calls?" Jane was dissatisfied. "I don't know about that." Leo was, after all, on Ethan's side. He wouldn't tell anyone about his condition except his closest relatives. Leo's vagueness made Jane a little nervous. Had Ethan and Willow reconciled while she was in the hospital? What about her? What should she do? Ethan waited until it was dark, but Willow didn't come back and didn't answer her phone. He opened WhatsApp and sent a message to Willow. "Where did you go? When are you coming back?" "I made your favorite ribs. They're going to get cold if you don't come back soon." "Willow, happy birthday." A rustling sound came from outside. A purple flash of lightning lit up the sky. Ethan's expression tightened. He grabbed his car keys and walked to the entrance. Willow was most afraid of thunder. He had to go pick her up. After putting on his shoes, Ethan stared at the door in silence. Where should he go to pick her up? As he stood there stunned, someone knocked on the door. Ethan's lips curled up. He opened the door. "What took you so long? Are you cold? Why is it you?" Jane stood at the door, wearing a hospital gown with a jacket over it, her face pale. "Ethan, why didn't you come to see me?" She had taken a taxi, but she had gotten wet walking from the gate to the house. She had snuck out when the nurse wasn't looking. She couldn't hold on much longer. Her wound hurt terribly, and she felt awful. Willow glanced into the house. She didn't see Willow, but she smelled roses and saw several red balloons hanging from the ceiling. What day was it today? Jane quickly realized it was Willow's birthday. They had reconciled after all. Jane felt wronged and bit her lower lip. A sharp pain shot through her heart, so intense that her pupils dilated. Before she could say what she wanted to say, she knelt on the floor. Ethan's face changed. He picked her up and ran toward the car. He still cared about her, Jane thought, before she lost consciousness. In a daze, she heard voices from outside. "You have to save her." "The heart can't." "Protect the heart." She couldn't hear everything they were saying, only the word heart. She was conscious enough to know it was Ethan's voice. She had a heart condition. Ethan must have said that because of it, outside the hospital room. Ethan said to the attending physician, "You must save her, you can't let her die. The heart inside her body must not be harmed. Protect the heart, you must protect the heart." This heart belonged to his wife. It was only natural to be so worried. After all, she was now just a pile of ashes. The only thing left of her in this world was a heart beating in someone else's body. Nathaniel and Alara Blackwood rushed to the hospital and saw Ethan in the hallway. Ethan was a little surprised. "Dad, Mom, what are you doing here?" Alara's eyes were a little red. "We missed you, so we came to see you." Nathaniel glanced at the attending physician, who understood and quickly left. "I've hired a psychologist for you. You're going to see him now," Nathaniel said, his face grim. Ethan's eyes grew cold. "What do you mean, Nathaniel? What were you preparing at home before they came to the hospital? They had gone to Ethan's place first. The house was filled with things Ethan had prepared. Aunt Liu wasn't there. There were even ribs cooking in the kitchen, and 2 wine glasses and 2 sets of tableware on the table. "It's Willow's birthday," Ethan said, his lips pressed tightly together. His hair covered his eyelids, giving him a sharp, intimidating look, even when facing his father. "What's the point of a dead person celebrating a birthday?" Nathaniel sneered. Alara saw Ethan's expression change and pinched Nathaniel's arm. Ethan's eyes were piercing. "Who did you say is dead?" He clenched his fists. "Even if I die, she won't. Willow is 3 years younger than me. She's always been healthy." Nathaniel trembled with anger. "You must be crazy." He had been skeptical of what Leo had said on the phone, but now he was sure. Ethan had a problem. Nathaniel made a call. "Everyone, come over and take the young master to the car." Soon, Nathaniel's men arrived. Ethan glanced around and rolled up his sleeves. Fists flew, and Nathaniel's men were beaten to the ground. "Come on," Ethan said, clenching his fists. Nathaniel gritted his teeth and swung his cane, hitting Ethan on the neck. He grunted. Alara rushed to stop him, tears of distress streaming down her face. "Stop hitting him. Can't you talk things out?" When those men had tried to grab Ethan, they wouldn't have really hurt him because of his status. But Nathaniel was different. If Nathaniel hit him, he wouldn't fight back. "Look at him," Nathaniel shouted. Alara held Nathaniel's hand. "Let me talk to him, okay?" Nathaniel turned away. Alara walked over to Ethan, her trembling hand touching his neck. "Son, will you come with Mom and Dad? We're just going to see a doctor. If you're okay, you can go home tonight." Ethan had always been a filial son, especially to Alara. Alara had almost died giving birth to Ethan. Nathaniel had always been a stern and serious figure in Ethan's life, but Alara was different. Ethan hugged Alara, burying his face in her shoulder, and whispered, "Mom, Willow isn't dead." Alara closed her eyes and cried. Ethan was truly sick. Ethan got into the car with Alara beside him. Nathaniel was in the car behind. He gave an order that no one present was to reveal what had happened today. Ethan carried the weight of the entire Blackwood Corporation on his shoulders. He had inquired. Ethan's illness could be cured. 251, Psychiatric Hospital. The director and specialist stood at the entrance, looking out. The head of the Blackwood family was coming today. They had all rushed here from home in the middle of the night. Their eager anticipation was rewarded. A convoy of 5 cars drove up. The director and a specialist exchanged a look and went forward to greet them. Ethan's father was the first to get out of the car. "Mr. Blackwood," the director walked over. "You're here," Nathaniel nodded. "My son is in the first car." "Understood," the director waved, and medical staff came forward. Ethan opened the car door himself. "I'll walk." From the looks of these people, they were planning to use force. Ethan was a seasoned businessman, young but with none of the naivety of youth. His eyes made people want to look away. The sign for 251 Psychiatric Hospital was made of some kind of metal, with a bronze sheen. The writing on it was covered in rust, but the inside of the hospital was clean. Most of the inpatient buildings were dark, except for the one facing the entrance, which was still lit. The director led the way for Nathaniel. Ethan walked behind with his hands in his pockets. A clock hung in the center of the outpatient lobby. Ethan glanced at it. It was 11:30. Another half hour and today would be over. He still hadn't wished Willow a happy birthday. The ribs in the pot were probably cold. Ethan took his phone out of his pocket, opened WhatsApp, and found Willow. "I'm at the hospital. Are you home yet? I'll be back as soon as I can. Don't eat the ribs if they're cold." His fingers paused. Are you angry? Is that why you're not messaging me back? Nathaniel turned back and saw Ethan sending a message. He frowned and said to the director, I hope you can examine him tonight and see what's wrong. The director nodded repeatedly. Ethan was taken into the specialist's office. Nathaniel and Alara went with the director into the conference room. The situation in the specialist's office could be connected to the director's office. Before Ethan went in, the Blackwood family had explained the situation. Ethan's wife had died of illness, but Ethan didn't seem to accept this reality and always thought his wife was still alive. The specialist easily started the conversation, but Ethan didn't say much. He kept his head down, looking at his phone. The specialist noticed. May I ask who you're waiting for a message from? My wife. The specialist's gaze shifted to his sharp brow bone. How did you get that scar? Ethan raised his hand and touched it, then smiled and met the specialist's eyes. In school, Willow was being followed. I got into a fight with those guys. He had bled a lot, and Willow had cried her heart out. That was the day he and Willow had their first kiss. May I ask how you and your wife met? At the racecourse. Ethan recalled their first meeting, as clear as if it had happened yesterday. He and a few friends were walking into the racecourse. As they were picking horses, they heard cheers from the crowd outside. On the track, a girl in a red riding suit wore a black hat, holding the reins with one hand. Her slender legs gripped the horse's belly, and her fair calves were clad in gleaming leather boots. She leaned to the side and scooped up the prize from the ground. Her waist must be very flexible. That was Ethan's first thought when he saw her. Then the girl glanced in his direction. The specialist saw Ethan was lost in memories. He studied his expression, trying not to miss a single detail, but he was too far away at the time and didn't see the girl's face clearly. But even a vague silhouette was beautiful. 20 minutes later, during free time, Ethan saw Willow again on horseback. She had dismounted and was holding her hat in her hand. Her waterfall-like black hair fell softly on her shoulders. Ethan noticed she had small dimples. The moment her hair blew in the wind, Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Who pursued whom? The specialist asked, pulling Ethan from his memories. The man's handsome features were illuminated by the light, making him look cold. I did. He had never liked a girl so much before. He wanted to hold her in his arms, protect her, kiss her, and make her his. He wanted to pluck the stars from the sky for her. Even if she asked for his life one day, he would give it. The specialist crossed his hands. So you two have always been happy. Ethan was stunned, his lips tightening. Alara, watching on the monitor, wrung her hands. After a long time, Ethan shifted his position. She betrayed me. When the specialist asked again, Ethan didn't say another word, so they moved on to the machine testing phase. Various tests were conducted throughout the night. The next morning, the specialist took the reports and handed them to the Blackwood couple. It's mainly a psychological disorder, with severe symptoms of fantasy and delusion. The specialist's recommendation was to stay for treatment. Nathaniel agreed, but Alara looked worried. Nathaniel glanced at Ethan, who was sitting with his back to the monitor. My son is not easy to handle. The specialist nodded. Understood. 7 minutes later, the specialist went to talk to him first. Ethan showed strong resistance, and a dozen orderlies in blue uniforms rushed in. The doctor injected Ethan with a sedative, but he still struggled violently. My wife is waiting for me at home. I can't be here. Ethan gradually felt weak, his breathing slowing down. He stared blankly at the ceiling and closed his eyes tightly. Was his father crazy? Ethan stayed in the psychiatric hospital for half a month. For the first week, he had no freedom. Nathaniel's men were always on guard nearby, and 251 Hospital was not easy to escape from. Security was very strict. It wasn't until a week later, after a comprehensive assessment showed that Ethan's mental state was relatively stable, that they decided to give him activity time on Monday. The daily activities for patients at 251 Hospital were varied. Everyone could borrow books from the front desk nurse to read. You could apply to sunbathe in the courtyard, and there were also public classes. Ethan sat on a chair in the shade of a tree, rubbing his fingers. Why didn't Willow come to see him? His phone had been confiscated. There was a collective time to watch news and TV shows every day, but he missed her. He didn't care about anything anymore. He wanted her back. 3 years ago, she had left without hesitation. He should have kept looking for her then. Willow loved him so much. How could she be with Gideon Cross? The specialist looked down from upstairs. Ethan looked up, not knowing what he was looking at. Is it really safe to let him walk around freely? The director asked, standing next to the specialist. The specialist smiled without saying a word. Ethan's main issue was a psychological disorder. He was preparing to do hypnosis therapy on him. The hypnosis therapy was scheduled for 3 days later. During this time, every day Ethan would sit in the hospital courtyard, staring blankly at the gate. His mother had visited twice. Willow, not once. A leaf fell at Ethan's feet. It was a maple leaf, Willow's favorite. He bent down and picked it up. He twirled the stem, then held the leaf up to block the sun, squinting. "Mr. Blackwood," someone called him. He turned his head. "Dr. Liu wants you to go to the treatment room." The orderly stood next to him, waiting for Ethan to get up. "Is it pretty?" He showed him the leaf. The orderly smiled and nodded. "Pretty." The two of them walked toward the treatment room together. The orderly occasionally stole glances at Ethan. On the night this gentleman arrived, it took more than 10 people to restrain him, but he hadn't caused any trouble during his long stay here. "You can go in. I'll just take you this far." The orderly smiled and opened the door in front of them. Dr. Liu had been waiting in the treatment room for a while. "Ethan, hypnosis?" Ethan glanced at the equipment in the room and had a good idea of what was going on. "Mr. Blackwood is very smart," the specialist smiled warmly. Ethan lay on the bed and said, "I'm not sick." The specialist smiled. "Yes, you're not sick." Ethan closed his eyes in frustration, and the specialist began to hypnotize him. In a daze, he saw Willow, a long, long time ago. The girl's face was still round with baby fat, pure and lovely. The scene flashed by like a movie at double speed. Ethan's fingers clenched, making a cracking sound. The person on the bed was emotionally volatile, but Dr. Liu didn't stop, continuing with the hypnosis therapy. Ethan gradually began to tremble, tears forcing their way out of his eyes. The whole bed shook violently because of his trembling. Dr. Liu snapped his fingers. Ethan's expression was pained. He gradually stopped trembling and curled up, his eyes closed, his hair damp with tears. His cries were suppressed. Ethan sat up, covering his eyes with his arm, his palms pressed firmly against the bed. Dr. Liu got him some water. "Congratulations, you can be discharged." His hand trembled uncontrollably as he lowered his head, gasping for breath. "Thank you." Getting off the bed, he staggered out. Dr. Liu said nothing and notified the director. The director first called the Blackwood family. Nathaniel asked for details. Hearing Dr. Liu's assurance that he was cured, he agreed to Ethan's discharge. The director approved the order. Ethan wasn't in a hurry to leave. He sat for a while under the tree he often frequented before leaving. He carried his bag in his left hand and was about to make a call as he walked. He glanced up and hung up. Leela was standing at the entrance of the psychiatric hospital, waiting for him. "I heard from Chairman Blackwood that you were being discharged," Leo said, helping him open the car door. Ethan nodded and bent down to get into the car. Leo jogged to the passenger seat and looked at the person in the rearview mirror. Leo didn't dare to ask anything. As the car engine started, Ethan met Leo's gaze. Leo instantly recoiled. The latter's faint voice came through. "During this time, is there anything about the company you need to tell me?" "Mr. Lee's cooperation is progressing. Everything else is normal." Originally, Ethan had told him he would be away from the company for 2 days and that he would handle things. He hadn't expected to be gone for more than half a month. Ethan held out his hand. "Cigarette." Smoking wasn't allowed in the hospital, but he wanted one. He used to not have a smoking habit, but now he was a little addicted. Lee handed him a cigarette and turned on the car's air conditioning. He said softly, "Mr. Blackwood, do you need to check into a hotel first? Aunt Liu just went home and the house hasn't been cleaned yet." Ethan's eyelashes trembled. He waved his hand. "Go straight back." In the living room on the sofa, the roses had all withered. Only the red balloons floated above. Aunt Liu deftly threw the withered flowers into the trash can and then began to deal with the balloons. Leo had said Ethan was on a business trip, and he had been gone for more than half a month. The things in the house were probably no longer needed. By the time Ethan got home, the living room was spotless. The air was sprayed with a very light fragrance, the scent that Willow used to love. Ethan was a little lost in thought. "Mr. Blackwood," Aunt Liu came over hurriedly. "I've dealt with the things in the kitchen." Ethan glanced toward the kitchen, didn't say a word, and went upstairs, leaving Aunt Liu to mutter to herself in the living room. In the bedroom, Ethan stood by the bed, his fingers stroking the urn. Willow was dead, contained in this small world, unable to cry, laugh, or have any warmth. He slept with the box in his arms until evening, when the city lights came on. He took out his phone and sent a message to Leo. "Buy me a burial plot in Yangshan." Leo wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "I'll get right on it." He had never dared to test Ethan, because even before, if he didn't mention Willow, he seemed like a normal person. It seemed he was really better now. Leo worked quickly. After securing the plot, he reported back to Ethan. Ethan hung up the phone and knocked on the door in front of him. After a long moment, footsteps came from inside. Gideon was surprised to see Ethan's face on the screen. He sneered, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He touched his mouth. The place where he had been hit last time still hurt. His family was bankrupt, and he was overwhelmed with family matters. And now Ethan had shown up. Gideon looked around and picked up a golf club. He hid his hand behind his back and opened the door for Ethan. "Mr. Blackwood, what a rare guest," Gideon said, looking past him, but saw no one else. It seemed he had come alone, but it was possible his assistant and bodyguards were with him. Seeing his hand behind his back, Ethan understood. He pushed Gideon aside and entered the house. Gideon turned back, hesitating for a few seconds between attacking him and not, and chose the latter. Ethan sat on the sofa, in the same spot where Gideon had been humiliated that day. Gideon pressed his tongue against his cheek, a fake smile on his face. "What brings Mr. Blackwood here? What did you use to threaten Willow Thorne?" Unexpectedly, the man said such words. Gideon was stunned, then smiled. "You figured it out, huh?" He suddenly relaxed and sat opposite Ethan. Now that Willow was dead, there was no point in Gideon hiding anything anymore. After all, he had threatened her to be with her. Since Ethan had asked, he would tell him. Anyway, the one who would be living in misery wouldn't be him. "Remember that money your Blackwood family received? Willow came to me for it, and I gave it to her." Gideon smiled and sent a video from his phone to Ethan's email. "Back then, Willow chose to break up with you, first to save you, and second because of this." He leaned back comfortably, a smirk on his face. Ethan finished watching the video. It showed a man and a woman entering a hotel together and leaving hand in hand the next day. There was nothing particularly special about it, but the main character in the video was Willow's mother, Victoria Thorne. Victoria Thorne was having an affair. No wonder she was blackmailed by Gideon. Gideon beckoned to Ethan. "Give me back Willow's ashes. I bought them from Victoria Thorne at a high price." "She sold the ashes?" Ethan's brow furrowed. Willow was her daughter. She would trade her daughter's ashes with Gideon. Gideon smiled and held up 5 fingers. "Yes, for 5 million. Ethan stood up and walked out. Gideon licked his lips, his fingers stroking the golf club. "Ethan Blackwood, are you going to return them or not?" Ethan turned back and kicked him in the chest. Gideon fell to the ground, clutching his chest and coughing violently. "Damn, this guy Goo is ruthless." "Hey," Gideon said, rubbing his chest as he got up, shouting at Ethan's back, "don't think that Jane is innocent. Where do you think I got the video of Victoria Thorne's affair? Ethan Blackwood, I'm telling you, that girl gave it to me. That girl has had her eyes on you for a long time. She was jealous of Willow. So when my dad bankrupted the Blackwood family, she came to me directly because she knew I liked Willow." Ethan stopped at the door. Gideon laughed loudly. "Don't you think a car accident on a rainy night is a staple of idol dramas? Do you think you're the male lead? It's raining, so you have to have a car accident, and a beauty has to save the hero. I'm telling you, check that Jane. Who knows what kind of shady deal she had with that driver." Ethan's fingers clenched, making a cracking sound. When he first met Willow, she had introduced him to Jane, her best friend. "She knew you were Willow's boyfriend and still deliberately got close to you, comforting you. What kind of person do you think she is?" After shouting, Gideon started to gasp for breath. Damn it, he was going to the hospital right now. If Ethan had broken something, he would make him pay. Gideon followed Ethan out of the door, got into his own car, and followed Ethan all the way to the hospital. Gideon looked at the hospital sign and smiled. Jane was finished. But maybe not. What if Ethan just liked Jane? Jane had just woken up and was on an IV drip. Ethan pushed open the door to the hospital room and walked in. Jane sat up in surprise, but before she could speak, the man's hand was around her neck. Jane didn't understand why he was doing this. Ethan? Tears welled up in her eyes, making her look pitiful, but there was no pity in Ethan's eyes. He pressed his palm on the bed and leaned over, staring into her eyes. The sharp, cold light in his eyes made Jane tremble involuntarily. "Get well soon," Ethan said with a slight smile. His fingers stroked her neck a couple of times. The cold light in his eyes flashed and was gone. When Jane looked closely, his eyes were as calm and emotionless as usual. She was being too nervous. Jane remembered what had happened that night, and after embellishing it a bit, said, "Have you and Willow made up?" The woman's eyes reddened. Ethan's gaze was faint. "She's dead." Jane was shocked. She carefully studied Ethan's expression but couldn't tell if he was telling the truth or not. "What are you joking about?" Jane said with a stiff smile. Was he testing her? Ever since Ethan had gone on that business trip, she felt that his attitude toward her had changed. She bit her lip. Ethan had always valued gratitude. Jane said pitifully, "Ethan, don't talk about Willow like that. She was my best friend. Even though she betrayed you, you two still had a history. That night it was raining heavily and you went to find her. I think it's understandable that she didn't see you. After all, she didn't love you anymore." Jane suddenly stopped moving, biting her lower lip. "Ethan, my bones hurt so much. I think my bones are dislocated again." That car accident was deliberately planned by Jane to pretend to save Ethan. But the driver had been careless and had actually hit her. Now her whole body was fragile. To put it bluntly, no matter what, she had been injured and gotten sick to save Ethan. It wouldn't be too much for her to ask Ethan to take care of her for the rest of her life, right? Jane gritted her teeth. Why was Willow so lucky? Best friend? A friend who could get you killed. Ethan sneered. Jane should be grateful that Willow's heart was in her body. She was now just a vessel for a heart. But Jane was completely unaware of Ethan's thoughts. In the following days, Ethan's people would bring her supplements every day. Before she was discharged, the doctor gave her several more checkups. The doctor said the new heart was adapting very well in her body. Jane felt she was truly lucky. She had found a suitable heart, and the transplant had been a success. Ethan picked her up and took her home. In the living room, Jane saw a portrait of Willow. Was Willow really dead? Jane's eyes widened, and then a wave of joy washed over her. Did this mean she could become Mrs. Blackwood? Because of Ethan, she had become like this. Ethan also felt indebted to her. He would definitely marry her. "Ethan, where will I be staying?" Jane linked her arm with Ethan's and looked up at him. "Where do you want to stay?" Ethan looked down at her, his eyes devoid of warmth. Jane was subconsciously a little scared, but her heart was still sweet. If it weren't for this man's charisma that attracted her back then, why would she have followed him without hesitation when he was bankrupt? Jane stood on her tiptoes and wrapped her arms around his neck. "I want to stay in your room." Behind this beautiful face was an incredibly vicious heart. Ethan pinched her cheek and said in a low voice, "Do you want to die in my room?" Jane's face flushed red, and she buried her head in his chest. What was he talking about? If Jane knew what Ethan was thinking, she would know she had misunderstood. "Aunt Frances, take good care of Miss Ivers," Ethan said, pushing Jane away and walking into the study. Aunt Frances reluctantly came over and took Jane to the guest room on the first floor. This had been arranged by Mr. Blackwood in advance. Aunt Frances was 100% against Jane staying here. This Miss Ivers was not as kind as Mrs. Blackwood, nor did she care for Mr. Blackwood as purely as Mrs. Blackwood did. Her eyes darted around, making her look detestable. What a pity Mrs. Blackwood had passed away so early. Aunt Frances sighed. Sisterhood group chat. "Jane, I heard you moved into the Blackwood mansion. Are you about to become Mrs. Blackwood? Our Jane just has the look of a rich wife. She's so lucky to be able to marry the head of the Blackwood Corporation, Ethan Blackwood." The messages in the WhatsApp group chat refreshed quickly. Jane looked at them with a smug smile, feeling proud. She replied, "It's not confirmed yet, don't spread rumors." Her friends replied one after another. "Not confirmed means it's possible, right? Jane, you have to invite us to your wedding, and bring us to any parties in the future. We want to see what high society is like, if the air is sweeter than what we breathe. And who knows, maybe we can snag a rich husband." Jane sneered. These country bumpkins. These people weren't even worthy of carrying her shoes, yet they were always thinking about snagging a rich husband. Did they think rich husbands were turtles in a fish tank, so easy to catch? She tossed her phone aside, feeling bored. Soon, she began to look around the room excitedly. Willow probably never imagined that her man, her things, would all end up being hers. Knock, 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 Miss Ivers. It was the voice of the Blackwoods housekeeper, Aunt Frances. Jane opened the door, her expression arrogant. "What is it?" "The master asked me to make you your favorite soup." Jane's heart skipped a beat. She poked Aunt Frances's shoulder. "Next time, knock lighter. I have a heart condition. I get scared easily." Aunt Frances endured Jane's rude behavior and stepped aside to let her pass. Jane walked like a proud peacock, but the bone broth on the table made Jane's face fall. She hated bone broth. It was greasy and would make her gain weight. "Did you make a mistake?" Jane turned to Aunt Frances angrily. Didn't this old woman say that Ethan had told her to make her favorite soup? What was this on the table? "What mistake?" Ethan came downstairs. Jane immediately changed her expression, looking frail. "Ethan, I don't like bone broth. It's too greasy." "You don't like it?" Ethan's voice was icy cold. Jane shivered. Looking at his expression, it seemed that if she dared to say she didn't like it again, he would lose his temper. Jane's face was ugly. She forced a smile and shook her head. "No, I like it." "Bone broth is good for you," Ethan said, his eyes filled with a hidden meaning. Jane's earlier displeasure vanished. Well, Ethan was just a straight man. He probably asked someone what was most nutritious and was told bone broth, so he had the maid make it for her. In the end, he was still worried about her. But this bone broth was a huge portion. Jane didn't know this was a portion for 3 people. Aunt Frances felt uneasy. This bone broth was Willow's favorite. At night, Jane was half asleep when she heard a sound. She got up and went out. She saw a light coming from the living room. Ethan was sitting downstairs watching TV. Jane walked down and glanced at the TV. One look and she was struck by lightning. Ethan was watching wedding highlights of him and Willow. Willow was wearing a white wedding dress, holding a bouquet. Ethan was in a suit. They were smiling sweetly. Jane bit her lip. As Willow's best friend, she had attended their wedding. Ethan and Willow's wedding was a grand affair. There wasn't a single girl in the city who didn't envy Willow. Now, this exclusive love belonged to her. Jane walked over to Ethan, hugged his arm, and rested her head on his shoulder. Ethan's eyes darkened. "That day, how did you know I went to find Willow?" The details of that time were not very clear, and he couldn't remember them well. He only remembered the glaring lights, running into the middle of the road, and a car rushing toward him. Then Jane pushed him forward, and the car hit her. Jane suffered multiple fractures and stayed in the hospital for 14 months. He had gone to find Willow by himself. How did Jane happen to be there? Jane's heart was pounding, but it was easy to explain. She smiled. "I was driving by and saw someone who looked like you, so I got out of the car. I didn't expect you to almost get into an accident." She looked up at Ethan. "But Ethan, even though I gave up my career to save you, I don't regret it at all. If I had to do it again, I would still choose to save you." Ethan's expression was distant. Jane suddenly had a strong sense of unease, because Ethan had always kept a strong distance from her. If it weren't for that night when Ethan almost got into an accident, he probably would have never spoken to someone like her in his life. Jane was a little panicked. She didn't hesitate to straighten up and hug Ethan's neck, feeling the warmth of his body. She closed her eyes in intoxication, moved closer to his neck, and blew in his ear. "Ethan, I like you." Jane's voice was low, deliberately slowed down, a voice that was impossible to refuse. Ethan's hand rested on her shoulder, pushing her away. His eyes remained fixed on the TV. Jane glared at the TV resentfully. Now Willow was on the screen alone, looking so beautiful it made one's heart ache. Someone had once given Willow's appearance a very high evaluation, the most beautiful socialite in the city. Ethan's heart throbbed. He tugged at his collar, his eyes fixed on her vibrant smile on the screen. A suffocating tightness spread through his chest, and he began to have trouble breathing. Jane subconsciously looked at him. Ethan suddenly covered his face and shouted, "Get out!" Jane flinched. She wanted to say something, but Ethan turned his head. Their eyes met, and the reddish eyes made Jane's heart fill with fear. Her legs went weak, but she didn't dare to hesitate for a moment. She got up and stumbled upstairs. Ethan listened to the footsteps fade away and closed his eyes tightly. If it weren't for Willow's heart in her body, he would never let her off. Jane sat on the bed, feeling extremely wronged. Why did Ethan yell at her? Was he still thinking about Willow? How was Willow better than her? She was just pretty. The ringing of her phone interrupted Jane's complaints. She glanced at the caller ID angrily, her mood worsening. "Hello," but she had to answer. "Jane, I heard you found a very rich boyfriend." It was her stepfather, a drunkard. Jane was afraid of him. She had been climbing up with all her might just to escape this mire. "Dad, who did you hear that from? You think I don't know your friends?" Jane was speechless for a moment, but she didn't want to be involved with this kind of person for the rest of her life. "Yes, my boyfriend is very powerful, so you'd better behave yourself." Jane's tone was aggressive. The person on the other end was not happy. "You little brat, are you looking for death? I want 20,000 tonight. If I don't see the money, I'll come find you and let your boyfriend know what kind of person you are. Don't think you can disown your parents just because you've made something of yourself." The person on the other end cursed. Jane cried, "Where am I supposed to get 20,000 for you at this time of night? Ask your boyfriend for it. Isn't he rich? I'm only asking for 20,000, not 200,000. Are you crying because you want to die? Jane, I can't give it to you. Don't look for me anymore." A series of crashes came from the other end, accompanied by a woman's cries. Jane bit her lip until it bled. He was hitting her mother. "Stop hitting her. Give me a few hours. I can't get it for you at night even if I have it. Tomorrow I'll give you cash tomorrow morning." "Angus Young, you'd better keep your word." After hanging up, Jane stared blankly at the wall. She couldn't ask Ethan for this money. She couldn't bring herself to ask, and she had no excuse. She opened her phone and added up the balances on all her cards. She only had $5,000. She knew that if Angus Young didn't see the money tomorrow, he would go crazy. The sound of the TV outside had long since stopped. Jane tiptoed to the door, listened for a while, and after making sure there was no movement outside, she slowly walked out. There was only one guest room on the first floor. Ethan lived in the room on the east side of the second floor. Jane tiptoed up to the second floor and slowly pushed open the door to the guest room on the west side. The curtains were drawn in the room, and it was pitch black. Jane had a feeling that this was Willow's room. She took out her phone and turned on the flashlight, then saw the dressing table. On it were women's cosmetics. Jane's eyes paused. She was right, this was Willow's room. HMPH, sooner or later, she would be the mistress of this house. She would get rid of all of Willow's things. Under the dressing table, there were several drawers. In the darkness, Jane's heart was about to jump out of her chest. The drawers did not disappoint her. Inside were jewelry and accessories. Suddenly, the lights outside turned on. Jane was so scared she squatted down and held her breath. Footsteps approached, getting closer and closer. Jane looked at the crack in the door. Someone had stopped at the door. Jane covered her mouth. If Ethan found her in Willow's room, she would be dead. The doorknob turned slightly. Jane scrambled under the bed. Ethan walked in and turned on the bedroom light. From Jane's position, she could see the slippers he was wearing and his well-defined ankles. Jane trembled, covering her mouth, trying to suppress her fear and not make a sound. Then, the pair of slippers stopped in front of her. Jane's heart leaped into her throat. The familiar pain in her heart returned, and cold sweat broke out on her forehead. She prayed for Ethan to leave quickly, but her prayers were not answered. He turned around and sat down on the bed. It seemed he hadn't noticed her. Jane slowly breathed a sigh of relief. The space under the bed was small. Jane had always disliked dark places like this. They reminded her of some unpleasant childhood memories. When her stepfather was drunk, he would often hit her with his shoes. Sometimes she was beaten until she ended up under the bed, and sometimes she hid under the bed to avoid being beaten. She could hear her mother's miserable cries from the living room. Click! Ethan lit a cigarette. He looked at the bottles and jars on the dressing table, as if seeing Willow sitting there through time, putting on her makeup. The cigarette burned out. Ethan stubbed it out and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The bed had a fresh laundry detergent scent. If Willow liked something, she would only buy that one brand. The sheets at home all had this laundry detergent scent. Even though he had moved her pillow to his room, he still felt a lack of belonging. Coming into this room, he could feel her presence. Ethan turned on his side, his head resting on his arm. He closed his eyes and reached out, imagining Willow was right beside him. "My dearest," Willow wrapped her arms around his waist, her face pressed against his chest. "Let's have a baby, okay? I want a daughter. They say daughters look like their fathers. She was soft all over. Ethan loved to pinch her arms and hands. So soft he wanted to melt her into his bones. He tightened his arms. The woman in his arms giggled and pushed him. My dearest, I can't breathe. On the bed, the tall man lay on his side, his arms stubbornly embracing something, but there was nothing there. Jane slept fitfully under the bed all night. When she woke up the next day, Ethan had already left. She hid the jewelry she had stolen from the drawer in her pocket and snuck back to her own bedroom. When she went downstairs, only the housekeeper, Aunt Frances, was there. Breakfast was Chinese-style soy milk and fried dough sticks. Jane pouted. She preferred a Western-style breakfast. Aunt Frances said, "This was specially ordered by Mr. Blackwood. He wants you to finish it all." "Where is Mr. Blackwood?" Jane had no appetite. "He went to the company." Jane threw down her chopsticks and prepared to leave. Aunt Frances stopped her. "Mr. Blackwood told me to watch you finish. He wants you to take good care of your health." The calls for money were like calls from the Grim Reaper. Before 9 o'clock, Angus Young's call came. Jane glanced at Aunt Frances, hurried upstairs to get ready to go out, and said to the person on the other end, "Wait for me at home." She went to a second-hand luxury store and sold the jewelry she had stolen. Willow's jewelry was very valuable. She sold 3 pieces and had enough money for Angus Young. Jane wanted to cut ties with Angus Young completely, so she had to think of a way. Most importantly, she couldn't let Ethan know she had such a family. Jane's home was on the outskirts of the city, in a narrow alley with a few other families. The house was rented. Their original house had been gambled away by Angus Young. Jane endured the stench and pushed open the door to her home. Angus Young was sitting in a chair in his shorts, squinting at a book, the Book of Changes. Seeing Jane, he rubbed his hands and went straight for the bag on her back. Jane frowned and took a step back, throwing the bag at him. She didn't like Angus Young getting close to her. Angus Young unzipped the bag and roughly rummaged through it. "That was quick," he said with a fake smile. "I should have asked for 200,000. It seemed Jane could get 200,000 if he asked. Jane was so angry she could have crushed her teeth. She had never seen such a shameless person. "Where's my mom?" Jane looked around. Angus Young took 2 stacks of money from the bag, put them in his pocket, and said, "She's sick." He was wearing flip-flops, which made a slapping sound as he walked. He closed the door and left. Jane breathed a sigh of relief and went into the inner room. Her mother was lying in bed, covered with a blanket. Jane knew what was going on. This wasn't sickness. It was clearly a beating. Jane sat behind her and said, "Mom, let's get a divorce. I'll support you." The person in the bed moved but didn't turn her head. Her voice was muffled. "I can't. He'll kill me." Jane was angry at her for not fighting back and for being so timid, and she hated Angus Young for his violence. "Fine, do whatever you want." Jane walked out of the house in her high heels. A police car was parked in front of the alley. She didn't know who had committed a crime. Jane glanced at it and didn't pay much attention. Until the police stopped her. "Miss Jane Ivers, right. You are suspected of theft. Please come with us." Her brow furrowed deeply. "What are you talking about?" She took a step back, not wanting to get into the police car. Many neighbors heard the commotion and came out to watch. They saw the young girl from the Young family surrounded by police. "Oh my, what did she do? I wish her father would get arrested." "SHH, don't say that. If that scumbag hears you, he might retaliate." After someone said that, everyone fell silent. Jane was taken to the police station. The jewelry she had sold was with the police. The owner of the jewelry store was also there. Jane then realized that she had sold the jewelry too cheaply. One of the pieces alone was worth 3 times the total price she had sold it for. "I didn't steal it," Jane said. "Call Ethan Blackwood." Jane was confident. The police officer tapped the table with his finger. "It was Mr. Blackwood who reported it. He kindly took you in and you stole from his wife's belongings." Hearing this, Jane was struck by lightning. "Take her into custody," the police officer said. Jane struggled violently. "I don't believe it. I want to see Ethan Blackwood." She had only taken a few pieces of Willow's jewelry. What was the big deal? Willow was dead, and her things were useless anyway. What was wrong with her using them in an emergency? Ethan must have thought the house had been robbed, so he called the police. The police had found her. Ethan definitely didn't know. Jane shouted, "I want to call Ethan Blackwood. He's my boyfriend. He must have thought the things were lost, so he called the police. If he knew I took them, he wouldn't have reported it. The police officer handed her her bag. Go ahead and call. Jane took her phone out of her bag and dialed Ethan's number. She didn't want to stay in prison. A few seconds later, the call was connected. Ethan, I'm at the police station. Jane's voice was pitiful. There are all kinds of people here. I'm so scared. Come and get me. Put the police on the phone. Okay, Jane said with a smile, waving at the police officer to come and take the call. After the police officer took the phone, Jane crossed her arms and waited for the police to let her out. The police officer looked at Jane while on the phone. Jane thought, Ethan must be telling the police to let her go. Anyway, she had taken things from the Blackwood family. As long as Ethan didn't press charges, she wouldn't be held responsible. What did my boyfriend say? Jane asked eagerly after the call ended. The police officer handed her the phone back. Mr. Blackwood said he will not settle. He will not tolerate Miss Ivers' behavior and hopes we will proceed according to the law. What? Jane's eyes widened. Impossible. Ethan would never do that. No one wanted to waste their time with her. They all turned back to their work. Jane was going crazy. She grabbed the iron bars and shouted, I want to see Ethan Blackwood. You're lying to me. He would never say that. Jane's eyes widened. We're getting married soon. We're about to get married. Why are you locking me up for taking something from my boyfriend's house? Jane shouted all night, but no one paid any attention. She got tired in the middle of the night and curled up in a corner to sleep. In a daze, she heard a familiar voice. Jane's eyes shot open. Ethan, sure enough, the tall, straight man was sitting at the police desk. Jane quickly got up and ran to the place where she could be closest to him, her hands gripping the bars. Ethan, are you here to pick me up? Ethan looked over, his eyes indifferent. This was the first time Jane sensed that something was wrong. Ethan, this is no place for a person to be. Get me out of here, Jane said anxiously. The police officer said something, and Ethan nodded and walked toward Jane. He was wearing a black suit and a wine red tie today. His long legs were wrapped in suit pants, and his expensive leather shoes made a crisp sound as they hit the floor. He stood in front of her, looking down at Jane, his eyes as cold as a stranger's. Jane was wronged. Ethan, I shouldn't have taken Willow's things, but I had my reasons. How about this, you bail me out, okay? I'll tell you why I took the jewelry. Miss Ivers, Ethan said, his voice distant. If you steal, you should be punished. In fact, Ethan shouldn't have known. It was just a few missing pieces of jewelry. A chill ran down Jane's back. That night, you knew I was there? Ethan lowered his eyes, his eyelashes casting a shadow on his eye sockets. He hadn't noticed that night. When he woke up the next morning, he found Jane under the bed. Jane's presence in Willow's room made Ethan feel disgusted. Jane wouldn't have gone into Willow's room for no reason. Ethan had found out that someone was blackmailing Jane. With a little thought, it all made sense. Besides, what Jane had sold were gifts he had given to Willow. He didn't speak, which was as good as admitting it. Jane was heartbroken. Ethan Blackwood, are you really going to do this? Jane took a step forward. Don't forget, Willow betrayed you, and I saved you when you were about to die. I gave up my beloved career to save you, and I almost died of a heart attack. At the mention of her heart, Ethan's expression changed slightly, but Jane didn't notice and continued to ramble on. Ethan Blackwood, if you have any conscience, you shouldn't treat me like this. Willow is already dead. Suddenly, Jane couldn't make a sound. The hand gripping her neck tightened. If the police hadn't stopped Ethan, she had no doubt she would have been strangled to death. After she could breathe again, she clutched her neck and coughed violently, a dull pain in her heart. Ethan Blackwood, are you trying to kill me? Tears fell, drop by drop, onto the floor. Shut up, the man's eyes were cold. If Willow's heart hadn't been transplanted into you, do you think you would have lived to this day? Boom, her mind went blank. Willow's heart was transplanted into her? Jane was stunned. What kind of joke was this? Willow would have hated her to death. How could she have donated her heart to her? I've already found evidence that you planned to have someone hit me that year. The man's cold voice fell. You can spend the rest of your life in prison. No, Jane shouted at Ethan's back. I didn't. Who told you that? No, she couldn't lose Ethan. She couldn't go to jail. Her friends all knew she was going to marry Ethan. If she went to jail, her life would be over. Ethan didn't look back. The evidence of Jane's crime was conclusive. She was prosecuted, and a trial date was set. Before the trial, an unexpected person came to see Jane. Jane was wearing a loose prison uniform with a number on the top left corner. 30,1056. Jane had lost weight, and her face, without makeup, looked pale and tired. When Gideon saw her like this, a mocking smile appeared on his lips. "The day you gave me the video of Victoria Thorne, you probably never thought you'd end up like this." Gideon wasn't a good person. He wasn't righteous, so he didn't hate bad girls like Jane. On the contrary, in order to make Willow and Ethan break up cleanly, they had made a deal. Unfortunately, now no one had gotten what they wanted. "I hate him," Jane said. Gideon crossed his arms and chuckled. "I heard Willow's heart is in you." Hearing him say this, Jane became even more annoyed. "Go away, I don't want to see you." "Jane, I'll wait for you to get out." Gideon looked at her back, his gaze falling on the left side of her spine, where Willow's heart was. Willow was gone, but her heart was still beating. Ethan took Willow's ashes to the Alps. This was a place Willow had always wanted to come to. As soon as he got out of the car, a chill hit him. Ethan put on another layer of clothing. Not far from the parking lot was a hotel. There were still vacant rooms. Ethan rented one. The hotel was run by a young man, not tall, with dark skin, wearing Tibetan clothing. He was enthusiastic. At night, by the fire, he told the hotel guests about the Valley of Death. This Valley of Death, also known as the Nailangel Canyon. It also had the common name of Kunlun's Gate to Hell, but the hotel owner said that this place was off limits. "Where are you from?" the hotel owner asked Ethan. "Rongcheng, you came alone?" Ethan shook his head. "With my wife." Ever since Ethan had checked into the hotel, Al had noticed him. Mainly because Ethan was so handsome, even more handsome than the lead actor of a hit TV series that had filmed here a few years ago. But he said he came with his wife, and Al hadn't seen a female companion. Noticing Al's confusion, Ethan squeezed the small bottle around his neck and said, "My wife passed away." The bottle contained half a bottle of ashes. Al quickly understood and felt a little sad. "She always wanted to come here, but I was never able to accompany her while she was alive." Ethan lowered his head and poked the firewood. Al got up and poured him a cup of butter tea. "It's not too late now." Ethan listened to these words and smiled. He knew Al was being kind, but it was just a comfort. Every day and every night, he missed Willow more and more, to the point of madness. He couldn't stay at home. That house was full of her scent. At first, he was attached to that scent, but the more attached he became, the more he missed her, to the point where he couldn't bear it. Bringing her to the Alps was a spur-of-the-moment decision, but now that he was here, Ethan didn't regret it. "Have you heard the story of reincarnation?" Al asked. Ethan took a sip of butter tea and shook his head. Al familiarly introduced, "There's a West Mutai pool here. If you can hold your breath in it for 2 minutes and then make a wish, you can realize a wish for your next life." Ethan smiled. "That's a lie, right?" Al clinked his cup with his. "Not necessarily. If someone really did realize a wish for their next life, how would we know?" The people around the fire were all amused by Al. No one took it seriously. At 5 o'clock, Ethan set out from the hotel. The guide was the hotel owner, and the destination was West Mutai Pool. The hotel owner usually didn't take people there, but Ethan gave him $5,000. It was only a 10-minute walk from the hotel to West Mutai Pool. It would be a waste not to earn this money. "The water is warm, just like a hot spring," Al said, leading Ethan in. Last night at 10 o'clock, Ethan had found him and said he wanted to come and make a wish today. Al suggested coming early, as there were many people who came to make wishes. Sure enough, before Ethan arrived, there were already 5 or 6 people there. West Mutai Pool was more like a natural landscape, with large and small pools that were not connected. There were springs at the bottom of the pools. In the time it took Al to turn his head, Ethan had already taken off his shirt, revealing his strong back. Ethan noticed that everyone who went down to make a wish had a small black stone in their hand. He asked Al, "What's that?" "A wishing stone." Al whispered, "But this thing is just a scam." Before he could finish, he saw Ethan walk toward a small wooden hut on the side. The wooden hut was a shop that specialized in selling these small black stones. Ethan pointed. "How much?" The owner made a 3 with his fingers. 30,000. Al followed behind, his heart aching at the sound. 30,000 was enough for him to live on for a year. Ethan took the stone and went into the water. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and sank to the bottom of the spring. Time passed, second by second. It was completely silent around him. He couldn't hear anything. If there was a next life, he still wanted to meet Willow. If he was destined to be a jerk in the next life, then Willow must not like him. He hoped Willow could live a long and happy life. 3 minutes passed, and Ethan still hadn't come up. Al waited anxiously. People were coming up one after another, unable to hold their breath any longer, shouting that they were giving up. In fact, this so-called story was all a lie. "Mr. Blackwood, you're over time," Al shouted into the water. But the man still had no intention of coming up. Just as he was hesitating whether to go down and pull him up, Ethan came up. He wiped his face with his hand and opened his eyes. 7 days later, Ethan boarded the plane back. He was tanned and had lost weight. A year later, the Blackwood Corporation opened a new entertainment company. Ethan bought the rights to 5 TV series, and 3 started filming in the first half of the year. A studio variety show produced by the Blackwood Corporation was well received. Ethan was sometimes so busy that he didn't even have time to eat. Alara would come to his house to take care of him. In fact, Alara had another purpose. She had a friend whose daughter was a nice girl and admired her son. She wanted to set them up. Alara kept looking outside. It was already 10 o'clock at night, and Ethan hadn't come back yet. If she hadn't called him in the afternoon and he had said he was coming back, Alara wouldn't have waited. 10 minutes later, lights appeared outside the door. Alara got up and went to the kitchen to serve the food. After a while, Ethan entered the house. He hung his suit jacket on the coat rack, loosened his tie, and unbuttoned the top 2 buttons of his shirt. "Dinner's ready," Alara said, wearing cotton gloves and placing a bowl of soup on the dining table. "Go wash your hands," she said to her tall son, then went back into the kitchen. The sound of running water came from the bathroom. Ethan went back to his bedroom to change. "Aunt Frances can do this," he said, helping to set the table. Alara waved her hand. "It's not tiring." "Have some ribs," Alara said, putting food on his plate. Ethan didn't say much. He ate very elegantly. Alara was absent-minded. Ethan sensed his mother's gaze on his face. He looked up and said, "Is something wrong? You eat first. I'll go cut some fruit." Ethan sensed that something was really wrong with his mother. Alara turned on the TV and watched an outdoor variety show. The guest on this episode was a new generation artist from the Blackwood Entertainment Company. The young man was fair-skinned and looked very gentle. Ethan sat next to her. Alara put the remote control on the coffee table, opened her phone's photo album, and handed it to Ethan. "This little girl is called Chloe. She's your Aunt Betty's daughter. She just came back from studying abroad this year. The girl is very pretty, isn't she? Mom has seen her, and she has a good personality." Alara carefully watched Ethan's face. She saw his gaze flick to the photo and then look away. Alara's heart sank. She had a feeling that this wasn't going to work, but she didn't give up. "Ethan, it's been a year since Willow passed away. The living have to keep living, right?" "Mom," Ethan said, "I owe her a debt I can never repay in this lifetime. How can I have the face to live a happy life?" Alara's heart ached. "Willow was a good child, you too just. There is no just. It's all my fault." Ethan held Alara's hand. "Mom, don't set me up on blind dates anymore. I won't get married again." He knew Willow wouldn't want him to stay single for her, but he had to. Alara fell silent and turned off her phone. Alara stood up and walked out, wiping her tears with her back to him. "I'm going home." Ethan was helpless. "Mom," Alara understood Ethan, but as a mother, she couldn't bear to see him like this. Ethan had the driver take Alara home. Soon, he was the only one left in the huge villa. He lay back on the sofa, looking at the large chandelier in the living room. Willow had chosen this light. Ethan could still remember the way her eyes had lit up then, so beautiful it was unreal. He took 2 pills. He had been suffering from severe insomnia recently. It had been a year, and he hadn't dreamed of her once. He missed her too much. He wanted to talk to her, hug her, and tell her he was sorry. Ethan went into Willow's bedroom and lay on the bed. At night, darkness enveloped the entire city. One by one, the lights went out, and the room was plunged into pure blackness. "My dearest," Ethan felt someone poke his face. He opened his eyes and saw Willow sitting on the side, hugging her knees. Ethan sat up and hugged her. He buried his face in her neck, inhaling her scent. "Willow," he shed tears, "I miss you so much." The warmth of the woman's neck was real. Ethan held on tightly, unwilling to let go. Why are you acting like a child? Willow gently stroked his hair. Ethan closed his eyes tightly, not daring to open them. He was afraid that if he opened them, Willow would disappear. He frantically kissed her neck, her jaw, her face, all the way to her eyes. It tickles, Willow dodged. Ethan's eyes shot open. The sky outside had brightened without him noticing. He was hugging a blanket in his arms, not Willow. There was no Willow at all. Ethan sat up, staring blankly out the window, and then let out a laugh. As soon as Alara left, Aunt Frances came back. He had breakfast and went to the company. Recently, his agent had taken a liking to a group of film and television students who hadn't graduated yet. Among them were many child stars who had already acted in many plays. The agent, Arlo, sent the artists' resumes to Ethan's office. Ethan was in an international video conference. Arlo, being perceptive, didn't say anything and backed out. After the meeting, Ethan picked up the resumes Arlo had brought and flipped through them one by one, until he saw a certain photo. Starlight Drama Academy, Leela Vance. The reason Ethan noticed her was because she looked a lot like Willow Thorne. Ethan called Arlo and told him to sign this artist. Arlo was surprised. This Leela Vance had the least acting experience among all the artist resumes he had submitted to the boss. But in a flash, Arlo understood. This Leela Vance was too beautiful. She could make a living on her looks alone. Arlo started to make contact, but Leela Vance was harder to sign than he had imagined. Leela Vance had an older brother named Zane Vance, who didn't want his sister to enter the entertainment industry. At the time, Leela Vance had enrolled in the art academy without her parents' knowledge. Now that she had graduated, her family intended for her to inherit the family business. Another reason Zane didn't agree was that last year, a costume drama had cast Leela as the third female lead. She had drowned during an underwater scene. After being sent to the hospital, the doctors had said it was difficult to treat her. Fortunately, he and his sister were lucky to be alive. That drowning had side effects. His sister often couldn't remember things clearly. Arlo reported this to Ethan truthfully. Ethan thought about it and decided to meet Leela Vance in person. He had searched online for clips of Leela Vance's acting. Her acting was not bad. The meeting was set for a week later. Arlo discovered that Blackwood Entertainment was not the only company trying to sign Leela Vance. I don't agree. Zane Vance stood with his hands on his hips, pacing back and forth. Zane was tall, 187 centimeters, and had been working out for years. His body was covered in muscles. His skin was dark, and he didn't look much like Leela, but he was indeed her biological brother. The siblings just took after different parents. Brother, I want to act. Leela's dream was to enter the entertainment industry and become a good actress. I've already spoken to the Human Resources Department. You're going to join the company tomorrow as an executive director. Zane intended to pave the way for Leela. He gave her 2 years, after which he would completely hand over the company to her. He was going to expand into the overseas market. I'm not going, Leela said, hugging a pillow and curling up on the sofa. You're just starstruck, Zane said angrily. Don't think I don't know why you want to get into the entertainment industry. Isn't it all for Sterling Shaw? Sterling Shaw, a former child star with a very classic bone structure, was the stoic type that Leela liked. Zane was right about one thing. Leela's decision to go to film school was indeed related to Sterling, who wouldn't want to be closer to their idol. But she disagreed with what Zane said. What did he mean by star-struck? If it weren't for Sterling's support, would she have gotten such high scores on her exams? Anyway, I'm not going to the company. It doesn't matter what you say, Leela said, flopping onto the sofa. Recently, Sterling's contract with his old company was about to expire. It was said that he had no intention of renewing it. No one knew which company he would sign with next. Some said Sterling was going to go independent and run his own studio. Zane couldn't win the argument with her and was furious. Fine, you want to get into the film industry, right? Go ahead, we'll see if you don't come crying back to me. Zane slammed the door and left. Leela sat up and made a face at the door. She wouldn't come crying back. She had a meeting with the CEO of Blackwood Corporation scheduled for the weekend. Although Blackwood Entertainment had only been established for a little over a year, it had strong resources. Besides, Blackwood Entertainment was the first film and television company to contact her. This sincerity made Leela a little tempted. The weekend arrived quickly. Leela drove to her appointment. This car was a graduation gift from her brother. Her brother was dark-skinned and had a bad temper, but he was really good to her. But Leela's driving skills were not very good. She tried several times, but couldn't get the car into the parking space. Until bang, the rear of her car hit the side of the car next to it. Leela's whole body went numb. She had hit a Bentley, a limited edition one at that. Leela moved her car to the side and got out to check the Bentley's condition. She covered her forehead. Her head was throbbing. There were 15 minutes until her meeting with the CEO of Blackwood Corporation. Leela waited for another 5 minutes for the owner of the car, but he didn't show up. She thought for a moment, took a sticky note from her bag, wrote her name and contact number on it, and stuck it on the car window. Leela took the elevator upstairs. When she arrived, someone was already at the table. She could only see the man's back. He had short, neat hair, and the small section of his neck that was exposed was long and slender. He was wearing a black suit. "I'm so sorry I'm late," Leela said. In fact, she wasn't late. But as an artist who wanted to sign with them, it was embarrassing to arrive after the boss. "It's fine." The man looked up, and Leela finally saw his face. Leela was stunned for a moment, because the man was incredibly handsome. She sensed the man staring at her and touched her face self-consciously. She suspected there was something on her face. If it were anyone else, she would have thought that this person was interested in her because he was staring at her like that. After all, she knew she was exceptionally beautiful, but Ethan Blackwood, it didn't seem like it. "Hello, Mr. Blackwood, I'm Leela Vance. It's a pleasure to meet you." She extended her hand. Ethan Blackwood, the man's palm was dry, his fingertips cool. They touched and then pulled away. "I hear your brother doesn't want you to enter the entertainment industry." Hearing this, Leela's face fell. "Yes, he's very against it. May I ask why?" Leela was actually embarrassed to say. Her brother always felt that she was not doing a proper job by entering the entertainment industry. He always wanted her to follow the path he had paved for her. After hearing this, Ethan understood. The entertainment industry seemed glamorous on the surface, but everyone who worked hard had suffered a lot. Leela's family was rich, so it was understandable that her brother didn't want her to enter an unknown circle. The waiter served the food and introduced it to them. "We're offering a complimentary mango delight. Would you like 2 glasses?" Leela shook her head. "No, thank you. It's delicious. I'm allergic to mangoes." Ethan's fingers paused. Willow was also allergic to mangoes. When they first started dating, he took her to have mango ice. She ate 2 cups, enduring the itch, and her whole body was covered in red rashes. The reason she didn't say anything was that she didn't want to spoil the mood. Ethan closed his eyes, his heart twisting in pain. In the end, Leela said, "I really want to sign with Blackwood. Mr. Blackwood, you can rest assured that I will convince my brother." Ethan made a promise. "If you sign with Blackwood, I guarantee that all resources will be given to you first. As long as you sign, I can give you the female lead in a co-production with Fruit TV." The two of them entered the elevator one after another. They pressed B2, which was the underground parking garage. Leela's phone hadn't rung. It seemed the owner of the Bentley hadn't seen that his car had been scratched. Then Leela strangely found that Ethan was standing next to that car. He was holding the note she had just written. Leela was terrified. "Mr. Blackwood, is this your car?" Seeing Ethan nod, Leela's heart sank. The note had Leela's name and contact information on it. Ethan didn't even have to ask to know that she was the one who hid it. "Mr. Blackwood, let's exchange contact information. Let me know how much the repair costs are, and I'll definitely compensate you." Leela drove out of the parking lot. Her brother's phone calls were blowing up. Leela hung up on him directly. She actually hung up on him. Zane sent 10 messages on WhatsApp. Leela glanced at them. They all had the same meaning. "Get your butt home now." Tusk, since he knew she was meeting with the CEO of Blackwood Entertainment, why didn't he go catch her in the act? Wasn't it because he was afraid of offending Blackwood? Leela turned the steering wheel and found a pottery shop that was popular on a video app. She had wanted to try it for a long time, and she wanted to make a cup. She heard the owner was handsome. Leela got out of the car. The door of the pottery shop was open. There was a large floor-to-ceiling glass window at the entrance, and the inside of the shop was in full view. Leela discovered a beautiful scene. A handsome young man in a black t-shirt and a brown apron was teaching someone how to make pottery hand in hand. This was that handsome owner. He looked fresh and clean. Leela entered the shop. The handsome owner turned his head. "Welcome." Then Leela discovered that this owner looked a bit familiar, a lot like Sterling Shaw. This look earned him a 1 in her heart. "What would you like to make?" The owner stood up, instructed the student to do it himself, washed his hands, and showed Leela a booklet. A cup. Most people who came to a pottery shop would make a cup first. The owner wasn't surprised. "I have a guest today. I'll have my brother teach you later." The owner smiled and shouted toward the curtain. "Brother, a little help." Behind the curtain was a small door that led to a break room. Leela stood at the counter and could hear the sound of a game being played inside. After the owner shouted, the game sound stopped. Footsteps came this way, the curtain was lifted, and Leela looked up, stunned. "Stir." Sterling Shaw nodded at her. Tanner said, "Brother, she wants to learn how to make a cup. You can teach her." Even after Tanner left, Leela was still in a daze. Her heart was pounding like a hammer. "Hello, Sterling. My name is Leela Vance. I'm a fan of yours." This was her idol, Sterling Shaw, the talented actor. Sterling Shaw, the little girl's eyes sparkled. Sterling smiled and shook her hand. Even when they were sitting opposite each other, Leela felt like she was dreaming. She had been thinking that she had to pursue her dream in the entertainment industry to have a chance to see Sterling. She hadn't expected the opportunity to come so suddenly. Sterling's hands were beautiful, with long, slender knuckles, not thick like most men's. They were very white but not at all feminine. Leela's fingers fidgeted. Her idol was about to teach her how to make pottery. This was enough to give her 800 beautiful dreams. Arlo had been ordered by Ethan to go to the popular pottery shop to find the owner. Blackwood's new variety show had a craft segment, and they wanted to invite the popular pottery shop owner to be on the show. Arlo then discovered that the little girl sitting inside looked familiar. Wasn't that Leela Vance, the one Mr. Blackwood wanted to sign? And the person opposite her was even more familiar to Arlo. Sterling Shaw Tanner had received the news early. Seeing Arlo, he went to wash his hands and took him inside to talk. He agreed to be on Blackwood's variety show. Arlo was, after all, a top agent. He hid his surprise and curiosity well, but Tanner knew his brother was an actor. It wouldn't be good if something got out. Tanner smiled. "Sterling is my brother. He helps out when the shop is busy." The older generation of the Shaw family made pottery. Tanner had inherited his father's craft. Sterling was a good student, and later, by chance, he was discovered by a talent scout and entered the entertainment industry. Arlo understood and reported the matter to Ethan truthfully. Leela gave the cup she had made with Sterling to him and got an autographed photo. "Have you acted in The Grand Tang of Chang'an?" Sterling asked. He had thought the girl looked familiar. Leela hadn't expected Sterling to know about The Grand Tang of Chang'an. She nodded vigorously and said, "I played Bai Zhai." Bai Zhai in The Grand Tang of Chang'an was a tragic character. Sterling remembered her well. Seeing Sterling up close strengthened Leela's desire to enter the entertainment industry. Her dream was to act in a drama with Sterling in her lifetime. The Vance residence. Zane, Mr. Vance, and Mrs. Vance were all there. As soon as Leela entered, she sensed the serious atmosphere. Usually, her family doted on her like a little princess. This was the first time she had seen all three of them with such ugly expressions. Relatively speaking, her mother was a little better. Leela decisively went to hug her mother's leg. "Mom, Mr. Vance, your brother has already arranged a position for you at the company. Don't say anything else. You're going to work tomorrow. Zane, I'll take you tomorrow." Leela buried her head in her mother's arm and said in a muffled voice, "I'm not going. I'm planning to sign with Blackwood." "This is my dream," Leela said, a little unhappy. Mrs. Vance said, "If you choose to be an actress, you'll be running all over the country. We don't know what the environment is like on set. What if what happened last time?" She couldn't finish her sentence. That accident last time almost killed her, Leela. She only had this one precious daughter. If something happened to her, how could she live? The more Mrs. Vance thought about it, the more scared she became. Leela scratched her head. She couldn't really remember how the accident had happened. After drowning, something went wrong, and her memory was blank for a while. It wasn't until later that she slowly remembered many things. Leela hugged her mother's neck. "The company will arrange for an agent and an assistant for me. Besides, won't I be driving if I go to work at the company? There's a chance of a car accident when you drive." Mrs. Vance raised her hand as if to hit her. Leela shrank her neck and begged for mercy. "I was wrong. I won't say such things anymore. Mom, don't hit me. Her mom had always been elegant. Only Leela could break her elegance. Zane, Mr. Vance was reluctant but had to do it. Lock your sister up. If she wants to be a star, she can just stay home. Let's go. Mr. Vance held Mrs. Vance's hand. Leela stomped her foot and looked at Zane pitifully. Brother, you can't do this to me. I'm your biological sister. Zane grabbed her by the neck. If you weren't my biological sister, I wouldn't bother with you. Leela was grounded. She lay on the bed like a starfish. Extremely bored, she rolled over and got up, found a horror movie to cast, and turned the volume up so loud that the whole hallway was filled with an eerie sound. Leela was like a little girl in every way, except for her courage, which was surprisingly big. Zane shook his head and asked the auntie to make her favorite bone broth. For some reason, the girl had become obsessed with it this year. She used to not like it much. The horror movie made Leela sleepy. She hugged her knees and dozed off. In a daze, she saw Sterling's face, so handsome that Leela wanted to be a rogue. She closed her eyes and giggled, waking herself up. The TV had automatically started playing another drama. Leela turned it off with the remote control. Sterling's Weibo hadn't been updated recently. Later that night, the auntie came to call her for dinner. Leela didn't say anything. Her brother had grounded her. She couldn't escape, but no one could stop her from going on a hunger strike. Her parents' ideas were not wrong, but she didn't want to struggle in an industry she didn't like. She didn't like a life that was planned out for her. It was too boring. Leela's refusal to eat worried Zane. At night, Zane brought her dinner himself. It's me. Open the door. Zane was holding a tray. Who would have thought that the powerful head of the Vance Corporation was actually a doting brother? Letting Zane in, Leela sat cross-legged on the bed, playing a game. She was unmoved by the fragrant dinner Zane had brought. Are you planning to starve yourself to death? Zane's voice was deep. Leela didn't say anything. The game sound effects were clattering, until the game ended. Leela threw the tablet aside and looked up at her brother. Which character do you like in My Fair Princess? Zane, the fifth prince. Leela pulled down the bedsheet and draped it over herself. Then, brother, let me play Wrong Momo for you. Zane. Are you crazy? Your Majesty, please reconsider. Her Majesty the Empress is only thinking of you. Please do not disappoint Her Majesty's kindness, Zane. Eat. He snatched the bedsheet from Leela and grabbed her collar, dragging her to the table. Zane pushed her down, just like when he used to make Leela do her homework as a child. Don't leave a single grain of rice. Zane crossed his arms and moved a chair to sit next to Leela. His eyes, which made little girls scream, stared at her without blinking. Fine, she'll eat. Leela picked up her chopsticks. Zane sighed. I can let you play in the entertainment industry for 2 years. If you don't have any achievements after 2 years, you have to come back and inherit the family business. He had also thought it through. His sister had always been stubborn. It was also because they had spoiled her too much. No one could persuade her. Even if she temporarily agreed to go to work at the company, she probably wouldn't give up on the entertainment industry. It was better to let her hit a few walls. At this time, Zane would never have thought that 2 years was too long. Leela became famous in just 6 months after entering the entertainment industry. The silly brother who was now watching his sister eat had not yet realized this. But, can you not speak in such a drawn-out way? Leela's eyes widened. Was Zane going to go back on his word? He knew what she was thinking in her head. Zane roughly ruffled her hair. I didn't regret it, but I'm not comfortable with the assistant your company assigns you. I have a suitable person here. Who is it? Zane. You're quite familiar with him. This piqued Leela's interest. She was familiar with someone around Zane, his secretary. Would her dear brother give her that precious secretary? She probably couldn't afford that assistant's salary. Go to bed early. I'll take you to Blackwood tomorrow. Leela followed Zane like a little tail. Zane's back was tall. Leela rubbed her hands and jumped onto his back. Zane stumbled. He turned back helplessly. Are you a child? Leela pinched Zane's ear. In front of you, brother. I'm a child even when I'm 80. Her small hands wrapped around the man's neck. Brother, what are you going to tell Dad? Zane, you don't have to worry about that. Brother, thank you, Leela said sweetly. Zane mischievously spun around. In a short while, Leela was crying and begging for mercy. She was most afraid of getting dizzy. On WhatsApp, a red one appeared next to new friends. Ethan Blackwood had added Leela as a friend. Leela took a shower and went to sleep. She didn't see the friend request, but strangely, that night, she dreamed of the CEO of Blackwood Entertainment. In the dream, they seemed to be quite close. When she woke up the next day, Leela rubbed her face and thought, it must be because Ethan's face was too handsome and had triggered her dream system. The Vance's car was parked outside. Leela got into the car with a light spring in her step. She hadn't expected her brother to personally take her. "Brother, let's go." Leela was in high spirits. At the same time, a Weibo push notification popped up on her phone. Sterling Shaw had reposted a new Weibo. "Very happy to join Blackwood Entertainment. Let's move forward together in the future. At the same time, I would like to thank my old company for their support over the past 10 years. Without New Clothes Entertainment, there would be no Sterling Shaw today." Most people supported Sterling's move to Blackwood. Sterling had always been active in the TV circle. Blackwood Entertainment's film resources were very strong. Industry insiders had long revealed that Sterling intended to move into the film industry. Sterling joining Blackwood was undoubtedly a great addition. And Leela covered her mouth in excitement. From now on, she and Sterling would be artists from the same company. This was probably fate. "What did you see that made you so happy?" Zane noticed Leela's strangeness. Leela was so excited, she stomped her feet. "Brother, my brother Sterling has joined Blackwood. We'll be colleagues in the future, brother. I'm so excited, brother." Zane rolled his eyes. She called him brother so affectionately. Did that Sterling give her pocket money? Did he clean up her messes? Did he serve her food? And he had already become Leela's brother. Leela, this ungrateful brat. In the future, she would definitely be a stinky girl who would forget her brother once she had a boyfriend. The car sped by, and 10 minutes later, they arrived at the entrance of Blackwood. "Brother, I can go by myself. You can go back." She thought her brother was just on the way, but when Leela turned back, she found that her brother had gotten out of the car. It was now 10:30 in the morning, long past Zane's work time. Leela reminded him, "Brother, you're late." "Zane, you don't have to tell me. Did you swallow a firecracker?" He was fine just now. The sky turned cloudy just like that. They say a woman's heart is like a needle at the bottom of the sea, and a June sky is like a baby's face. She thought her brother's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea, and Zane's heart was like a baby's face. They had been siblings for over 20 years. Zane didn't even need Leela to say anything to know that this girl was cursing him in her heart. Zane, stinky girl. Leela, so petty. Ethan arranged for someone to greet Leela at the front desk. "Follow me," Arlo said, leading the two of them into the elevator. He couldn't help but size up Zane. The genes of these siblings were really good. If Zane wasn't in a high position now, he would really want to poach him to be his artist. Look at this face, a leading man's face. Sensing the burning gaze on his face, Zane glanced at Arlo. Arlo's heart skipped a beat. He didn't dare to stare at Zane anymore. Just now, Zane was so kind to Leela. Arlo saw it and forgot that he was a very successful businessman. He wanted to slap himself. How could he stare at Zane so directly? The CEO's office of Blackwood was on the 36th floor. The three of them took the express elevator, which didn't stop all the way. When Arlo brought them in, Ethan was standing by the window, on the phone. Hearing the sound, he turned back and waved. Zane nodded and sat down with Leela on the side. Leela was a little reserved. She lowered her head to play with her phone and only then discovered that someone had added her as a friend on WhatsApp. This made her even more guilty. The person who added her was Ethan. She hadn't accepted it for a day. She didn't know how much the Bentley's repair costs were. She wasn't afraid of paying. After all, her family was rich. She just felt that she had scratched her boss's car before she even started working. What kind of omen was this? Zane ignored Leela's inner struggle. He noticed a photo frame on Ethan's desk, but it was too far away and Zane couldn't see the person in the photo frame clearly. "Sorry for the wait," Ethan said, striding over with his long legs. His secretary brought in 3 cups of coffee and placed them down one by one. Ethan handed the contract to Leela. "This is the actor's contract. Take a look. If there are no problems, you can sign on the last page." Zane also got a copy. He was slightly surprised. It seemed this Mr. Blackwood knew that he didn't want Leela to come here. Otherwise, there would be no need to give him a copy specifically. Zane was an old hand in the business world. He hadn't seen an acting contract before, but he had seen other contracts. The contract terms were very clear, with no hidden traps. Zane glanced at it a few times and put it down. He extended his hand to Ethan. "I'll leave my sister in Mr. Blackwood's care from now on. She will be a good actress," Ethan replied, shaking his hand. Ethan was watching casting videos. The acting was so bad it annoyed him. He decided to close his laptop, out of sight, out of mind. He rested his head on the desk and picked up the photo frame. The photo inside was of him and Willow, taken on their first trip to Qinghai. The wind in Qinghai was strong, and Willow's hair was all messed up, but his girl was still the most beautiful. Ethan stroked her face. His phone dinged with a WhatsApp message, his mother's daily greeting asking if he had eaten. "I have," Ethan replied, only then seeing that Leela had accepted his friend request. "Mr. Blackwood, how much is the car repair fee?" Leela's message came almost immediately. He replied, "You don't have to pay." He had no feelings for Leela. He had signed her because she looked like Willow. And her skills were also impressive. In a few days, it would be his and Willow's anniversary. He had booked a restaurant at the Sky Pavilion. Ethan lowered his head and touched the red string around his neck. Blackwood had just bought the rights to a suspenseful and supernatural story. The casting director favored Sterling Shaw for the male lead and wanted to use a popular actress from Red Sail Entertainment for the female lead. Ethan read the script. He felt that this role was also quite suitable for Leela. Leela and Sterling were now both managed by Arlo. Blackwood was able to sign Sterling because they had made significant concessions in the contract. Sterling had a high degree of freedom. When Leela found out she could be in The Mystic, she couldn't sleep well. The Mystic was a big IP, written by her favorite author. 2 years ago, by chance, she had added the author on WhatsApp and had always wanted to meet in person, but hadn't had the chance to say so. But today, the script was in her hands. The author received the casting information and took the initiative to contact Leela. They set a time to meet. On the day of the appointment, Leela brought paper, a pen, and the script, like a student going to class. The car had been stuck in traffic for 3 minutes. Leela looked out the window, bored. A large screen was playing an interview. It was a financial interview with Ethan. At the same time, a name appeared at number 47 on the trending list. Jane Ivers. Leela was about to click on it, but the car in front moved. She threw her phone aside and didn't click, so she didn't see that Jane had been released from prison. The reason Jane was on the trending list was that since Blackwood had established its entertainment company, Ethan had finally come into the public eye. Some insiders, from who knows where, had posted on a certain forum, creating a thread with 1,000 floors. Digging into the life of the Blackwood CEO. The post mentioned Jane, mentioning that Jane had stolen the jewelry of Ethan's deceased wife. An insider left a comment. One comment after another, Jane's entire background was dug up. Jane's stepfather was currently in prison, and her mother worked in a factory. Including the fact that Jane had once claimed she would marry Ethan. The fact that Jane and Ethan's late wife were best friends was also revealed. Leela didn't pay attention to this. Zane did. Because his sister had signed with Blackwood, he had someone look into the company. His assistant sent him the information. The beginning was unremarkable until Zane saw the section on Ethan's wife. His heart skipped a beat. How could Ethan's late wife look so much like Leela Alex? Zane turned to his assistant. "Go and arrange a dinner with the boss of Blackwood Entertainment for me." What was Ethan's real intention in signing Leela? Was he looking for a substitute? He wouldn't allow it when Ethan received Zane's invitation. He was not surprised. They met at the Golden Palace. Zane arrived first. He stared at the door, his lips pressed tightly together. What if Ethan really did have improper thoughts about Leela? He narrowed his eyes. He would pay any amount of breach of contract fee to get Leela to terminate her contract with Blackwood. The door opened, and Ethan walked in. The man was dressed in a sharp suit, his long legs encased in trousers. Ethan sat down opposite Zane. Zane waved to the waiter. He looked at the man opposite him. "The Buddha jumps over the wall at the Golden Palace is exceptional. Would Mr. Blackwood like to try it?" "Mr. Vance, I prefer to get straight to the point." Zane closed the menu and said, "Bring one of each." The waiter left. Zane rubbed the knuckles of his hand. "Mr. Blackwood, have you taken a liking to my sister?" Ethan was stunned, his eyes turning cold. "I have a wife and I only love her." Zane was suspicious. "Rest assured, I have no interest in Miss Vance," Ethan said, squeezing the red string around his neck. "Mr. Vance doesn't need to overthink it." Zane nodded, for some reason feeling displeased. Zane had received news that Ethan's late wife, Willow, had died of intestinal cancer more than a year ago. After that, there had been no other women in Ethan's life. He was afraid his silly sister was being used as a substitute. The car drove into the Vance family's garage. Zane looked out and saw that the villa was dark. He frowned. Was no one home? Today was the 6th. Didn't Aunt Zhang say she wasn't coming home until the 10th? But Zane didn't think much of it and entered the password at the door. "Mr. Vance, we won the bid for the Tian Homes project." Zane lowered his head and replied, "Good." Pop Leela sprayed Zane with a can of silly string. "Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday dear brother, happy birthday to you." Today was Zane's birthday. Zane had forgotten. "Brother, this is your gift. I wish you to stay this young every year and find me a sister-in-law soon." Leela had bought Zane a Patek Philippe watch. Zane tapped her on the forehead. "You're so cheeky." After eating the cake, he went back to his room, changed into his home clothes, and thought for a moment before going to find Leela. In the room, Leela was watching Sterling's hit drama with delight. Zane looked at Sterling's handsome face on the TV and suddenly felt that his worries were unnecessary. Sterling and Ethan were not the same type, but Ethan's face was also dangerously handsome. "Leela," Zane sat on the edge of the bed, stroking her hair. Leela looked up. Zane said, "Stay away from your boss." Leela didn't understand, but her brother's words were always right. Seeing that she had agreed, Zane didn't plan to stay any longer. "Then I won't disturb your drama. Go to bed early. You have dark circles under your eyes." I know. You're just like Mom." The way he nagged, she knew he was her biological brother. After finishing the drama, it was already 10 o'clock. Leela still wasn't sleepy. She really wanted to go on a trip. Leela fell asleep in a daze. "My dearest, I really want to see the Alps." The man's voice was deep. "I'll go with you." Leela could see the metal buttons on his shirt and even his hands clearly, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't see his face. My dearest? Who was my dearest? Leela didn't sleep well again. The next day, at the script meeting, Leela was on time for work. Many fans were waiting outside the company, most of them to see Sterling. She had met the original author last time. The Mystic was a suspenseful and supernatural work, with not too many scary scenes, but if you followed the reasoning, you would feel a chill down your spine. Especially the final culprit, who was very unexpected. What was also unexpected was that the author of the book was very cute. There was a kind of contrasting charm. When she arrived at the conference room, a few young actors had already arrived. They greeted each other. Leela found her name tag and sat down, then opened the script. The producer glanced at Leela. He had heard that she was the female lead handpicked by Ethan. At the time, everyone was optimistic about the popular actress from Red Sail Entertainment, who had both fame and acting skills. He didn't know why Ethan had chosen this newcomer. Sterling arrived soon. This was Leela's first script meeting, and she was going to be acting opposite Sterling. She couldn't help but feel nervous. Sterling was a little surprised to see her. His agent had told him earlier that the female lead of The Mystic was Leela Vance, a newcomer signed by Blackwood Entertainment. But he hadn't expected Leela to be the girl who had gone to the pottery shop to learn pottery. Sterling smiled at her. Leela waved back slightly. The script meeting ended. Leela went out and Sterling followed her. "The cup is beautiful," he said. The man's voice was deep. Leela's heart was pounding. "It's because you're a good teacher." As soon as Leela finished speaking, they were both stunned. Sterling asked, "How did you get here?" "I drove." Leela regretted it a little. Why did she say she drove? What if she hadn't said anything? She could have gotten a ride back. Mainly because she had seen Sterling up close again today, Leela was a little ecstatic and not thinking clearly. She really, really liked Sterling. "This is for you." Sterling handed Leela a small box. He smiled. "As a return gift for the cup you gave me last time." Back in her car, Leela couldn't wait to open the gift. Sterling had given her a sparkling bracelet, so beautiful it was unreal. Leela recognized the brand. This bracelet cost at least $20,000. Leela bit her lip. This gift was too expensive. Her cup was worthless. After Sterling got into the car, his agent handed him a bottle of water. "Do you know Leela?" He had thought the female lead would be the popular actress from Red Sail. She was famous, had a lot of scandals, but still had a lot of loyal fans and a good public image. It was supposed to be a win-win, but unexpectedly, the female lead was an unknown Leela. The agent was a little stressed. Sterling didn't talk much, especially to girls. Just now, seeing him take the initiative to talk to Leela, the agent felt like the sun was rising in the west. Yes, she's been to my brother's pottery shop. After Sterling finished speaking, he closed his eyes. The agent scratched his head. Was it that simple? The air conditioning in the car was on full blast. The agent took a blanket and covered Sterling with it. Sterling's eyelashes fluttered. The little girl's eyes were clean and pure. That day, when they were making pottery, he was the one who was distracted. He thought for a moment and turned to ask, "What's Leela's contact information, agent?" Knowing that she had signed with Blackwood, Mr. Vance was angry for a while. To please her parents, Leela went home for a visit. She personally cooked a few dishes, placed them on the dining table, and went to the study to invite her father. Leela stood behind Mr. Vance like a lackey, giving him a shoulder massage. "Dad, look how amazing your daughter is. Blackwood Entertainment is very selective. The fact that I could sign with them right after graduation shows that I have the potential to be in this industry." That Mr. Blackwood is a big boss, after all, and he has a keen eye, don't you think? Mr. Vance snorted coldly. "Dad, you've worked hard. It's my turn to earn money and take care of you." Mr. Vance snorted again. The Vance family was very wealthy. How much money could Leela earn from acting for 8 years? He didn't care about that amount of money. Besides, his daughter didn't lack money. She should just live a happy life. Why act? "Dad, and also, my idol Sterling and I are in the same agency." This time, Mr. Vance finally didn't snort coldly. He knew Sterling. The person on the big poster hanging in Leela's room was him. "Didn't you want to marry him?" Hearing this, Leela's face turned red. She had indeed said that. A few years ago, when she was young and foolish, she would tell her best friend every day that she wanted to marry Sterling. Thinking about it, she had really liked Sterling for a long time. About 7 years. 7 years, and it had never changed. That was just something a child would say. "It doesn't count," Leela said, touching her face. Mr. Vance turned to look at her. Still denying it, didn't her expression say it all? "If you want to go, then go. I won't stop you. But there's one condition. Take care of your health and safety. If you encounter difficulties, don't suffer alone. Tell me you understand?" Leela was moved to tears. Her father had finally relented. Zane was driving Leela home. He turned his head and saw Leela in the passenger seat, her eyes wide with excitement. He raised an eyebrow. "What's wrong?" Leela handed him her phone. "Brother, Sterling added me on WhatsApp. What are you so excited about? You're collaborating on a drama. Isn't it normal to add each other on WhatsApp?" Leela hugged her phone and accepted the request. Her brother was a real wet blanket. She was just excited, okay. She wasn't fantasizing about anything. Seeing Sterling's profile picture, Leela suddenly thought of Ethan, so she turned to look at her brother. "By the way, brother." "Yes. I scratched our boss's car last time. Can you help me pay him back?" Ethan said she didn't have to, but how could she not? Leela didn't like to owe people. Zane felt a headache coming on. "You shouldn't drive anymore." Leela was wronged. She was actually fine with everything else, just not parking. But if she couldn't drive, she couldn't drive. It's not like the family didn't have a driver. Sterling rarely posted on his moments. In less than half an hour, Leela had finished scrolling through all of his. The content was mostly related to his dramas, with a small portion of his daily life. She was scrolling through Sterling's moments. Would Sterling also scroll through hers? Leela's heart skipped a beat. She opened her own moments to check if there was anything inappropriate. As Leela scrolled, her heart pounded. She had expressed her love for Sterling on her moments more than once. But then she thought she had already called herself his fan in person. It wouldn't matter if he saw it. Her moments, besides food, games, and her love for Sterling, had nothing else. Leela turned off her phone and hung her head over the side of the bed, trying to recharge her brain. Ever since they met at the pottery shop, everything had felt like a dream. Leela smiled, then curled up and kicked her legs. She was so happy. Although The Mystic was a suspense IP, the romance scenes were also quite significant, with many kiss scenes squeal. Leela held her face, which was as red as a shrimp. Would Sterling's lips be very soft? The more Leela thought about it, the more awake she became. She sat up, took her phone, and opened her chat with Sterling. She sent him a sticker. Mainly because she didn't know what to say, she still wanted to message Sterling. But her brother was right. It was common for the male and female leads of a drama to add each other on WhatsApp. Maybe Sterling had added all the actors in the cast. Sterling sneezed heavily. He pulled the towel off and wrapped it around his waist, then pushed open the bathroom door. His phone showed an unread WhatsApp message. It was from Leela. Sterling dried his hair and looked. The little girl had sent a very cute greeting sticker. "Do you play Arena of Valor?" since Sterling asked. "Leela, I do, Sterling. In 10 minutes? Okay," Sterling smiled. Leela rolled around on the bed, hugging her phone. Oh my God, she was going to play a game with Sterling. She wondered if Sterling was good at games. Leela didn't fall asleep until 3 in the morning, mainly because she had been playing games with Sterling all night. Sterling was very skilled, the best gamer among Leela's friends. How could there be such a handsome, talented, and kind all-around boy who was also so good at games? Sterling was truly a gift to the world. A month later, the Mystic held its opening ceremony in Gideon. After that, Leela officially joined the crew. Before joining the crew, the company held a meeting. This was the second time Leela had seen Ethan since their last meeting a month ago. He was thinner, wearing a well-fitting suit. His hair was neatly combed, his bone structure was excellent, and his eyes were not easy to look at directly. After the meeting, Leela was asked to stay behind. Alone with the boss, Leela was very nervous. "If you need anything, just tell Arlo. The company will do its best to accommodate you." Ethan patted her on the shoulder and smiled. "Go on." Leela breathed a sigh of relief and quickly left the conference room. After walking a few steps, her heart suddenly felt a sharp pain, and she felt a little sad. She looked back, not knowing why she had suddenly had an emotional fluctuation. Leela joined the crew. The Mystic was scheduled to shoot for 3 months. Ethan visited the set twice. His newly signed artist, Leela, was very dedicated. Before that, Zane had transferred a sum of money to him with the note, "Car repair fee?" It was probably Leela who had asked Zane to do it. Soon, in a few days, it would be the anniversary of Willow's death. Ethan had already arranged his work schedule. He decided to take Willow on a trip every year. Until he died, on the day he could go find her. He, Ethan Blackwood, had lived a straightforward life, but he was guilty and indebted to Willow alone. He knew he could never repay her in this lifetime. Because Willow was dead, he had no chance to be good to her, no chance to atone for his sins. Even if he knelt, he could only kneel before her ashes. Ethan had been having recurring dreams recently, always about things that had happened with Willow in the past. Sometimes he would dream of stories where he and Willow were the main characters, but the events had never happened. The dreams were too beautiful. Waking up was a kind of torture for him every time. Sometimes Ethan just wanted to never wake up from a dream. Time passed, bit by bit. Sometimes he would lose track of dream and reality. In his dreams, he and Willow had children. Sometimes when he woke up, he would subconsciously continue the dream setting. But seeing the empty room and Aunt Frances's surprised expression, Ethan felt so ridiculous. Willow was dead. He knew this reality better than anyone, but he didn't want to accept it. As the Mystic wrapped up filming, a trending topic shocked the media. Blackwood Entertainment's new generation actress, Leela Vance, was rumored to be dating the talented actor, Sterling Shaw. The media had photographed the two on a date in a park, walking a dog together. 10 minutes later, Sterling posted on Weibo to confirm, and Leela followed suit. Fans who had thought it was just media hype were all in disbelief. For a time, the internet was filled with curses. Blackwood urgently did public relations, and Leela was called into the CEO's office. Ethan sat behind his desk. After Leela came in, she carefully watched Ethan's expression. Although the contract did not prohibit artists from dating, it was an unspoken rule in every company. Dating was fine, but it was not good to expose it to the public, especially since Leela hadn't notified her company in advance. "Mr. Blackwood, you were looking for me?" Leela took a deep breath and walked to his desk. She lowered her head, not daring to look into his eyes, her gaze fixed on his hands. "Do you know that this situation will affect your future?" Sterling was very famous, the idol of thousands of girls. Leela nodded. "I know." Ethan didn't speak. Leela said, "But Mr. Blackwood, I really like Sterling. I don't care about the curses outside. I've always felt that in this industry, you survive on your own strength." She would act well and prove herself. Ethan chuckled. He hadn't said anything yet, and she had already blurted out a whole bunch. He pinched the bridge of his nose and extended his hand to her. "I look forward to your nirvana," Leela smiled. She had thought she would be shelved by Ethan for causing such a scandal, but he didn't. She had initially thought that Ethan might use her relationship with Sterling to exploit him. But Ethan didn't do that either. Leela was once again sure that signing with Blackwood Entertainment was the rightest decision she had ever made. Leela deactivated her Weibo and devoted herself to acting. Then everyone discovered that this little-known actress, who had exposed her relationship with Sterling shortly after her debut, was actually quite good at acting. Leela participated in a reality show. Fans who had thought Leela was going to leech off Sterling's fame discovered that this girl had a pretty good personality. Then, those who thought Leela was poor and had schemed against Sterling discovered that this girl was actually a rich second generation. Her family was the famous Vance family in Rongcheng. Leela's dramas became hits one after another. She went from an 18th-tier actress to a first-tier actress in less than 6 months. Her national approval rating was approaching #1. Leela had made a comeback. Those who had previously sung a different tune about her relationship with Sterling were now all blessing them. Even the Weibo account, "Did Leela and Sterling break up today?" was changed to "Did Leela and Sterling get married today?" Sterling did not disappoint everyone's expectations. A year and a half later, he posted his marriage certificate with Leela on Weibo. Weibo crashed for a while. And Zayn, who had been expecting his sister to not achieve anything in the entertainment industry for 2 years, also had his plans foiled. Because of Leela, the Vance Corporation's stock soared. Leela often had a dream in which the man named "My Dearest" always apologized to her. In 2 years, she had had the dream many times, but she had never seen his face. But later, the frequency of this dream gradually decreased. She would dream of Sterling more often. When she opened her eyes, she would see Sterling. She was very happy. Later, she never dreamed of that man named "My Dearest" again. For a while, Leela always felt a sense of emptiness in her heart, but Sterling was very good to her. So good that he filled the void in her heart. 2 months later, Leela found out she was pregnant. She stopped working to wait for the baby. Sterling had just finished a drama he had been filming, and after that, he turned down a new drama his agent had chosen for him. Leela was pregnant, and he wanted to be with her. He really, really loved this girl. This girl was a ray of light in his ordinary life. She was pure and beautiful. Even just thinking of her made him happy. Every time he held her in his arms, Sterling felt a strong sense of satisfaction. Sterling didn't even dare to think about what would happen if he lost Leela in the future. He could only be infinitely good to her in his limited life. Leela had a wish, which was to go to the Alps with her beloved. She was 5 months pregnant, and her belly was already showing. Sterling had initially disagreed, but seeing her anticipation, he agreed to take her there to see it. The plane flew for 2 hours, and Leela slept for 2 hours. When she and Sterling got off the plane, Leela thought she saw a familiar person, but the moment Sterling took her hand, she was distracted. When she looked up again, that person was gone. Leela laughed at herself. She must have been seeing things. Otherwise, how could she have seen her boss, Ethan Blackwood, here? Leela then realized that Ethan's name also had Kai in it. What a coincidence. Sterling and Leela stayed at a nearby hotel. The owner's name was Al. He told them a legend about West Mu Tai Pool. Leela listened with her face in her hands, a look of longing on her face. Sterling, on the other hand, held his wife in his arms. He didn't hope for a next life. He only wanted to be good to Leela in this life. Leela snuggled into Sterling's arms and looked up at him. "Sterling, if there's a next life, would you still want to be with me?" "No," Sterling pinched her nose. "I want to be with you for all eternity." Leela punched him in the chest. "You, that was so cheesy." Footsteps came from the stairs on the 2nd floor. Al turned his head and waved. "Hey, Akai, come and warm yourself by the fire." "Akai?" Leela suddenly turned her head and met someone's gaze. Ethan Blackwood. Ethan was stunned. He hadn't expected Leela to be here too. The man next to her also turned his head. It was Sterling. Sterling and Leela were the most famous couple artists of Blackwood Entertainment. Leela thought so she hadn't been seeing things when she got off the plane. Ethan was really here. Sterling greeted Ethan and moved aside with Leela to make room for him. Ethan sat down next to Leela. Al continued to tell the newcomers the story he told every year. Some listened, some were distracted. Ethan lowered his head, his ears filled with the crackling sound of the burning wood. Leela's belly was big, and she couldn't sit for long. After a while, her back started to hurt. Sterling helped Leela up and went back to their room. "Mr. Blackwood, we're going up now," Sterling said. Ethan nodded. After they left, he was in a daze for a while. Leela lay on the bed. Sterling took off her shoes and sat beside her, massaging her feet. As her pregnancy progressed, her legs and feet swelled easily. Sterling felt very sorry for Leela. He would never have a second child. Leela stroked her belly, full of anticipation for the little life inside. Would it be a boy or a girl? "My dearest, I want to have 2 children in the future, a boy and a girl." "Ethan Blackwood, will you love me for a lifetime?" "Ethan Blackwood, I love you so, so much." "Ethan Blackwood, let's break up." "Get out, Ethan." "It hurts, it's so late. Can you take me to the hospital?" "Where does it hurt?" "My stomach." "Miss Thorne, your performances are getting more and more realistic. How long did you rehearse for this little show?" Willow's eyes gradually filled with despair. "From the day you betrayed me, I, Ethan Blackwood, swore I would never forgive you in this lifetime, unless you die." In the darkness, Ethan's eyes shot open, his face covered in tears. He hugged himself and buried his head in his arms. The wind howled outside. No one heard or saw the heartbroken person in the room. In the morning, the group left Al's hotel together. Ethan was staying for 2 more days, but Sterling and Leela were leaving first. "Goodbye, Mr. Blackwood," Leela said with a smile, waving at Ethan, standing next to Sterling, who had his arm around her waist. Ethan waved back, his thin lips parting. "Goodbye." Sterling nodded at Ethan and left with Leela. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through Ethan's heart, so intense that he couldn't help but curl up. "Akai, are you okay?" Al asked, nervously helping him up. Something flashed through Ethan's mind. He looked up and ran a few steps forward, but there was no one there. He was a little bewildered. He couldn't even remember what he had just thought of, what he had wanted to chase after. 2 days later, Ethan returned to Rongcheng. Alara came to see him and told him Nathaniel Blackwood was sick. Nathaniel was a very serious father. He rarely smiled at Ethan and was very strict with him. Ethan remembered being very afraid of him as a child. Later, he slowly understood that sometimes a father's love is silent. He just didn't know how to express it. He chose a relatively rigid way of getting along. Ethan went to the hospital. Nathaniel was lying in a hospital bed. He had lost weight. The father he had once thought of as tall was, at some point, no longer as tall as him. He used to think his father was a mountain, but even mountains get tired. Nathaniel smiled at Ethan and said, "Son, Dad doesn't know how much longer I have. The Blackwood Corporation is in your hands. You've worked hard." Ethan was still young, yet he carried such a heavy burden on his shoulders. Nathaniel felt sorry for him, but a man must have a man's sense of responsibility. Ethan had done a very good job. Nathaniel felt he had a very outstanding son. Nathaniel reached out and held Ethan's hand. He looked at Ethan's thin face, his usually stern voice softening. "Akai, don't blame yourself. Who hasn't made mistakes in their life? No one is perfect. Ethan was not a bad person. He knew this better than anyone. Willow wouldn't blame you." Nathaniel squeezed his hand. Ethan's thin lips tightened. "You too." He smiled at Ethan. "Let yourself go." This boy was stubborn and got stuck in his own head. He didn't know when he would be able to get over this. Ethan left the hospital room and leaned against the cold wall of the hospital. His nose was filled with the smell of disinfectant. Ethan closed his eyes. He quickly composed himself, walked over to his mother, and sat down. He gently patted his mother's back, letting her lean against him. The woman who usually loved to laugh sobbed in his arms. Half a month later, Nathaniel Blackwood passed away. On the day of the funeral, it rained heavily. Nathaniel was very popular, and many people came to see him off. Ethan wore a black suit and stood to the side. After the funeral, Ethan carried the coffin. Another year passed. Ethan took Willow to Lhasa. His entertainment company was doing better and better. Leela's first drama after her comeback was a big IP and was highly anticipated. Sterling won the Best Actor award. Leela gave birth to a son, whose eyes were like Sterling's and whose nose and mouth were very much like Leela's. The child was very handsome. Ethan had someone send a large red envelope. The Cross family. Jane was being held down at the dining table. She was a little fatter than before. "I won't eat," she pushed the plate and utensils in front of her, which fell to the floor with a clatter. The maid was at a loss. This Miss Jane was always so grumpy. The sound of a door opening came from the entrance. Hearing the sound, Jane began to tremble uncontrollably. After she was released from prison, Gideon had brought her here. He promised to pay for her mother's medical expenses. Because she had been in prison, no one was willing to help her. For her mother's sake, she agreed to Gideon's proposal. Gideon was a madman. The key was that when he looked at her, Jane always felt that he was looking at another person. If it were the old Gideon, Jane felt she could be with him, but the Cross family was now completely broke. "You're not eating?" Gideon threw his suit on the sofa. He was working himself to death to make a comeback. Jane pressed her lips together and said nothing. "You're not being good." Gideon motioned for the maid to bring a new set of utensils, then sat down next to Jane and held her cold hand. "You can't get cold, you know?" Gideon stared at her heart. Every time he looked at her like that, Jane felt a tingling sensation all over her body. "Why do you never let me eat cold things?" Jane bit her lip. Gideon's eyes were devoid of warmth. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "You have a bad heart." His thin lips curled up, but Jane could clearly see that this smile was not for her, and this concern was not for her either. The maid brought a new set of utensils. Jane threw the bowl. She stood up abruptly. "Are you using me as a substitute for Willow?" Jane trembled with anger. Gideon's eyes turned cold. He stood up, his thin lips parting. "Willow's heart is in you. You must protect her." "Jane, you have no right to be angry." "I don't want it." Jane was going crazy. The heart, it was all because of this heart she didn't want it anymore. Okay, Jane bent down to pick up a piece of porcelain, but Gideon snatched it from her. He held Jane's wrists, dragged her upstairs, and tied her to the headboard. Gideon turned around, went out of the bedroom, and came back with food. Jane burst into tears. Gideon turned a deaf ear, sat down beside her, and scooped up some rice with a spoon. "Ah, open your mouth." Jane closed her eyes and sobbed, but she still opened her mouth. She was afraid that if she didn't listen, Gideon would do something to her. Gideon's expression softened. He watched Jane eat the rice, bite by bite. "I don't love you, so don't test my limits, but you can also rest assured," he said. "As long as you're alive, I will be good to you." Because Willow's heart was in Jane's body. Jane sobbed. She might as well not have had the heart transplant. She might as well have just died. To be tied to Gideon for the rest of her life, she was in despair. He didn't love her. He was using her as a substitute. "Good girl," Gideon stroked her face, his voice gentle. "Good girl, Willow." Jane bit her lip hard, drawing blood. Gideon's fingers pressed on her lips, and he leaned in close to her. "It's bleeding. Does it hurt? You're most afraid of pain." Jane shivered all over, her heart filled with immense pain. Gideon went to get the first aid kit and cleaned her wound bit by bit. Jane kept her eyes closed, refusing to look at him. "If you don't like the auntie's cooking, I can replace her." Gideon squeezed her waist. "You've lost weight recently. I don't like you being too thin." She was too thin. It always reminded Gideon of the last few days of Willow's life. When she was so thin, she looked unreal. Gideon didn't want to experience that feeling of helplessness a second time, nor did he want to remember it. Jane slowly opened her eyes, and tears rolled down her cheeks, drop by drop onto the blanket. She was thin. After she came to the Cross family, she had gained a full 30 pounds. If she refused to eat, Gideon's eyes would become terrifying. "I will let you live a good life. I won't be this penniless forever." Gideon smiled and pinched her cheek. "Can I go see my mom?" She didn't want to stay at the Cross family for another minute. It would suffocate her. Gideon nodded. "I'll take you." Gideon untied her, got her clothes, and after Jane changed, he took her downstairs. The car drove for 2.5 hours to the suburbs. Jane got out of the car. The neighbors here looked at Jane strangely. When Jane was a child, she was always the other family's child. Good at studying and with a good personality. Who knew that when she grew up, especially since she had been in prison? Usually, everyone gossiped that Jane might not be able to get married after she was released from prison, but they hadn't expected someone to marry her. The man was handsome and well-dressed. They heard his family used to be a wealthy family but had since fallen. Jane entered the house. Her mother was sewing something. Her eyesight was poor, and she couldn't thread the needle for a long time. She took the needle and thread, threaded it, and handed it to her mother. Seeing her, Jane's mother was happy. "Have you eaten? In the fridge." "I don't want to hear the word eat." Jane covered her ears, her eyes suddenly changing. Jane's mother was startled and didn't dare to speak for a long time. Jane realized what she had done and felt a little guilty. Her mother was afraid of being beaten and was usually afraid of people yelling at her. She shouldn't have. "Mom, I'm sorry." "Where's your son-in-law?" Jane's mother looked out. Jane gritted her teeth. "He's outside. Don't let him in, I don't want to see him." "Gideon, who don't you want to see?" A chill ran down Jane's back. She pressed her lips together. "Let's go home," Gideon said, looking at the time. Jane glared at him. Gideon sneered. "You don't want to go back?" Gideon was not unreasonable, but Jane's eyes couldn't hide things. She was clearly planning something. Before Jane could speak, her mother pushed her. Go back quickly." "Mom," Jane looked at her mother with disappointment. If she hadn't persuaded her to divorce her stepfather back then, and she hadn't, would this have happened today? She remembered that her stepfather had been mean to her as a child, hitting and scolding her. But her mother refused to divorce him. She even said that he wasn't like this before, that it was all the alcohol's fault. If she had been clear-headed then and divorced Angus young, she wouldn't have been beaten and gotten sick. It wasn't until Angus young got into trouble and went to prison that her mother could finally breathe. She had been very envious of other children when she was a child. They had new clothes, new school bags, new shoes. Their textbooks were always covered with beautiful book covers, and they would sit together with their friends after class and share snacks. And her? Everyone called her poor and rustic. She could only study desperately. Jane had only asked her family for money once, and she had gotten a beating for it. After that, she learned her lesson. She had never, ever hated her family so much. Jane's mother said softly, "Be good and go back." She muttered, then lowered her head and picked up her needle and thread to sew. Gideon took Jane's hand and led her out. "Let go of me." Jane shook off his hand. Everyone around looked over. Gideon put one hand in his pocket and looked down at her. "Are you going to get in the car yourself, or am I going to take you?" Gideon's thin lips tightened. Jane's face was pale. She bit her lip, took a step back, and knelt before Gideon. "I'm begging you, please let me go, okay? I don't want Willow's heart anymore. I'll dig it out for you, okay?" Gideon glanced back. Angus Young is about to be released from prison. Jane's mother was standing at the door. Hearing Gideon's words, the needle and thread fell to the floor. He squatted down and pinched Jane's chin. "As long as you're good, I can take your mother out and let her divorce Angus Young. Don't talk about digging out your heart anymore. Willow saved you. Even if you dig out your heart, she won't come back to life, you know? I don't want to hear you say such things again, Jane." Gideon's voice deepened. Jane sobbed and turned her head, seeing the anticipation in her mother's eyes. She clenched her fists, took a deep breath, and after a long moment stood up and said, "Okay, I'll go home with you." Willow was once her best friend. She had been very good to her. Jane regretted it. She regretted having her eyes on Ethan. If she hadn't been so greedy, she wouldn't be like this today. Jane was in a daze, a little hopeful. Her mother was the most important person in her life. Angus Young was in prison. Her mother, and she had never visited him. Given his personality, he would definitely be furious when he got out, and her mother would be miserable. She had to make her mother divorce him. Although Gideon was not as rich as before, he was the only person she could rely on. "You have to keep your word," Jane said, anxiously grabbing Gideon's arm. Gideon pulled his arm away and said, "I never go back on my word." Hearing this, Jane's mother took a breath. She turned around, went into the house, sat on the bed, and stared blankly at the needle and thread. After a long moment, she covered her face with her hands. It was raining, in the cemetery. A man holding a black umbrella walked up the steps, stopping a few steps later in front of a tombstone. The woman in the photo was smiling brightly. The man squatted down, his well-defined fingers touching her face. The rain dripped on the umbrella, wetting his leather shoes. "Willow," Ethan whispered with a faint smile, "I don't think I can hold on much longer." 3 months later, the world was shocked to hear. The CEO of the Blackwood Corporation, Ethan Blackwood, had died in an accident.